A lot of times there'll be a staff recommendation to approve. And unless there are any questions or issues or opposition or anyone willing to speak, we typically entertain motions and move on those relatively quickly. If there are recommendations to deny, we'll hear from staff and walk through those. I'll ask at each case if there's any opposition and or anybody that would like to speak relative to the case. So if you hear me say that and say the case number and you're would like to speak, please raise your hand. That allows us to know that there is someone here that would like to speak, and then we'll move into a process. Our process is for comments. If we're going to talk about a case either for denial or there's opposition, the applicant will be the first party to speak, and they will have 7 minutes, and we will watch that time and give them 7 minutes to present the case. If there's opposition or individuals that want to speak relative to that case, when I ask if there's any opposition and you raise your hand, if you want to speak, at some point I need you to come over and line up against the wall so I have an understanding of how many that want to speak, because opposition then has 9 minutes and we do keep to that 9 minutes. So I would encourage you that if there's a number of people that want to speak, that you know, you're aware of that, and if the person in front is maybe saying a couple of issues that they're concerned about, instead of just repeating that for 9 minutes, you know, it maybe get your thoughts in order. Maybe there's other things that we'd like to hear about, because we will keep to that 9 minutes, and then the applicant will have 2 minutes to respond to that. And so we will keep with that schedule. We will follow the agenda as presented. I do want to make you aware of a couple of cases under subdivision plats and variances. There is a variance case SD 2023-0055. It's a variance on Hunter Family Trace. It has been withdrawn and will not be heard today. Also, item number 2 under new business, which is case 2024-0018. It's a single wide special permit on 11763 Crestwood Trail. It has been withdrawn and it will not be heard. And there is a third case under new business. The case number is 2024-0019. It's located at 5735 Hunter Road. It was a request to rezone from A1 to R1. It has also been withdrawn and will not be heard. So those 3 cases have been withdrawn. Mr. Schultz, did I leave out any information needed?
No, I think you covered everything. I think there's a sheet in the back that's green and white that has the county commission and city council dates. Once it leaves here the following month, it will be heard at the county commission or city council based on those dates that are on the sheet in the back.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. So subdivision plats stop at planning commission. So we will go through those, but any rezoning under new business, this planning commission makes recommendations either to the county commissioner or the city council. And so, as Mr. Schultz said, those dates when they show up at those legislative bodies are in the back. So make sure you stay engaged in that. Okay, we will move into our agenda. We'll start with case number 2 under subdivision plats and variants. It's case number SD 2024-0001. It's a final plat for Sedman Hills Phase 5, lots 264 to 295. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? Okay, have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case under subdivision plats and variances is case number SD 2024-0010. It's a preliminary plat for Capstone Estates, lots 1 through 58. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, let me make one comment on this just because I'm aware relative to, just for the record. There are some inspection reports that are ongoing. There is a portion of this plat that is on a road that has already been constructed, and so there is still an ongoing process for inspection of that road and or private and or public. So just to make that, there was not any reason relative to staff that it couldn't move forward on preliminary plat. So seeing no opposition with that statement on the record, have a motion to approve has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is case number SD 2024-0011. It's a final plat for Knoll Park, lots 1 through 36. It's located at 4001 Udawa-Ringo Road, has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, on the next 2 cases, can we flip the order of those? We have the plat first and the variance second. I think we need to hear the variance first and then the plat.
Okay. We'll move to the variance request. It's case number SD 2024-0013. It's a variance for minimum road width. It's located at 7503 Igo Gap Road, has a staff recommendation to deny. Is the applicant present? Okay. Is there any opposition that would like to speak? Seeing none? Yes, sir. Mr. Farmer, if you could give your name and address.
Thank you. Jason Farmer, Riverstone Construction, 6005 Century X Drive. This is for the road is going to be the same. The road's the same size, 24 feet. It's for a 40-foot right-of-way variance is the request. Let me say, so I sat down and I met with Councilman Ledford. It's in his district, and went over the plans. I can fit this in at a 50-foot right-of-way, which would meet the subregs. Problem with that is going to be at a 40-foot right-of-way, I can put my buildings back 20 feet. At a 50-foot right-of-way, I put it back 15 feet. These are affordable workforce houses. They don't have garages. That's going to mean that the car is going to overhang over the sidewalk. And it's just really, ultimately for the homeowner, it's a bad design. I can fit it in and force it in under the subregs. I expected the staff's recommendation of denial. I kind of know that, and I realize we don't have a hardship, but though I see it as a hardship for the future homeowner, I would remind the commission that water and sewer is in the road. So from our perspective, it just makes for a better development.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Any questions for the applicant or the staff? And I maybe should have done staff recommendation prior to, but any comments from the staff?
I think Mr. Farmer's correct. We did look at it because we have new subdivision regulation standards that were adopted several months ago requiring 50-foot right-of-ways, and the hardship typically is the reason you ask for the variance. And that's one of the things we looked at is no real hardship here other than maybe a design standpoint.
I would also add that I can't do HPR in an RTZ zone. It would have been a perfect HPR development. It just doesn't fit. Or I'm not allowed in RTZ, and I asked the councilman if he would prefer this or rezoning, and he preferred we leave the zoning the same.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, Mr. Farmer and I did meet, and I know the area very well. Variance, I would argue we do have a little bit of a hardship, and it's called current zoning tools that don't help us out to make a better development. So in review of this, and also we have no issues with the fire department at all.
No, if I have an issue with CDOT, it'll be trash collection, and I can do that privately, but I can deal with that at the administrative level.
Sure, which will happen on the permitting side.
Yes,
So
sir.
with that, I will move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Variance carries. We'll move back to the preliminary plat, which I anticipate was based on either the variance being recommended or not.
That's correct.
So case SD 2024-0012, which is the preliminary plat for the RS on Igo Gap Road, lots 1 through 9, related to the variance that was just approved. Is there?
Second.
Okay. A motion to approve has been seconded. There was no opposition prior to, so any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next plat case is SD 2024-0014. It's for a final plat. Lots 1 through 53 located at 2600 through 3000 blocks of Mowbray Pike. As a staff recommendation to approve, is there any opposition? I have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Motion carries. Case SD 2024-0015. It's a final plat. Council Fire Patel Edition lots 1 through 16 located at 245 Scraption Trail. Staff recommendation to approve. Any opposition? I have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Case SD 2024-0016. It's a preliminary plat, White Oaks of Georgetown, lots 6 through 39, located at 7317 Gamble Road. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Any opposition? Seeing none. A motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Plat SD 2024-0017. It's a final plat for Page Meadows Phase 1, lots 1 through 7 and 16, located at 6699 Big Ridge Road. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Any opposition? A motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Case SD 2024-0018. It's a final plat at Farrell Ridge, lots 1 through 56, located at 9451 Highway 58. It's a staff recommendation to approve. Any opposition? I have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Case SD 2024-0019, final plat, Reflections Phase 2, lots 47 through 58 and 109 through 177, located at 2207 Udawa Ringo Road. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Any opposition? Okay. A motion to approve has been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Last subdivision plat on the agenda is a variance. It's a case SD 2024-0020. The variance for minimum flag lot size located at 938 Cooper's Edge Trail. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Any opposition?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we did receive emails in opposition.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Okay. Mr. Schultz, if you'll take us through this, and then, sir, you'll have some time to speak, and then if you can go ahead and come up and just be ready, and then whoever would like to speak on the opposition, if y'all want to go ahead and head to that wall maybe once he starts speaking. Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is SD 2024-20. This is a variance request to the minimum lot size of a flag lot. The minimum lot size has to be 1 acre, not counting the flag strip. This is currently a 4-acre tract of property. The applicant wishes to create a flag lot, which is shaded in red. It's less than 1 acre in size, therefore it needs a variance request. Hamilton County Engineering Department, Emergency Preparedness, the Highway Department, other members do not object to this variance request. We've approved similar request in the county for flag lots are less than 1 acre in size. It would not be detrimental to the public interest, so staff looked at this and recommended to approve. I have a closer view of that existing lot, what that looks like. It's off Suck Creek Road. And I have on the screen the adjacent addresses for people who are in opposition to this. Looks like it is a flag lot. We'll create 2 flag lots off Suck Creek. Will be accessed through a private road, which is Cooper's Edge Trail. But basically, when staff looked at it, it felt it met the requirements and recommended to approve the variance request.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? Okay, sir, if you want to come forward, if your name and address, and you've got 7 minutes.
Good afternoon. Rick Medina, 147 Narragansett Avenue, Chattanooga. Currently building at 938 Cooper's Edge Trail. And the reason why I submitted this application was really just for the future and giving myself options, because I would like to consider building a small property, for my in-laws. And then, just thinking about what to do in the future if that option 30 years down the road, once, they're not with us, just thinking about, would we ever want to sell that as a separate space? And that's the reason, understanding that there was no hardship with emergency preparedness and the recommendation was to approve. That's the reason why we submitted for this variance before we thought about building anything additional on that lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, ma'am, if you want to come forward, I'm assuming opposition. If you want to, come forward and your name and address, and collectively y'all will have 9 minutes.
Okay, I'll try and be fast. So hi, I'm Lindsay Miller. I am at 921 Cooper's Edge Trail. First off, thank you so much for allowing me to speak and participate in this public discussion. It's a really nice opportunity that we have as community members. I am fully supportive of landowners using their property in their own best interest. However, I'm not supportive of small acreages being divided into unsustainably smaller lots. My concerns can really be bucketed into 3 broad categories. Those are ecological, environmental, and public health, and I will focus most on public health and how that relates to sustainable development. First off, Suck Creek is a 2-lane road, you probably are aware, with limited shoulder space and no ability to expand due to the river and the mountain. And all the properties along Suck Creek Road are on well and septic. Our fire support is a volunteer fire department, which I fully support, but they are over 30 minutes away in terms of response time. But I want to start first with wells. Our bedrock in this area is like Swiss cheese, and we're all trying to hit that same aquifer. We don't know what additional wells are going to do to existing wells or to that aquifer, and we cannot accurately predict what impacts there may be to other properties. So just anecdotally, the well on my property has been there since the 50s and has reliably produced good water for over 70 years. However, when an additional well was drilled recently, we did see impacts to our well. Additionally, a neighbor across Suck Creek Road, so you'd think there wouldn't be any impact, also noticed impacts during the same time. So since each property does need a well to supply its water, we just want to be sustainable in thinking about how we're approving properties for well. And then next is septic. Each property is required to have its own septic and redundant backup system should the initial system fail. The current septic regulations do require primary backup, and we're currently seeing problems in areas such as Signal Mountain, due to choices that were made 30 years ago about how to divide those properties. There are septic systems that are failing on Signal right now that have no backup. I just don't want to set our area of Hamilton County up for similar problems 30, 40, 50 years down the road. I want to be thinking about my kids, my grandkids, and the sustainable development and practices that I supported to put into place for them. Also, wells and septic have to be 50 feet apart. We don't want contamination. So sustainable development really should be our goal. This proposed subdivision will set a precedent that half-acre lots are acceptable on well and septic on the side of a mountain, and I don't believe that that is sustainable. The precedent was cited for 2813 Suck Creek Road, which is a small lot with a flag to the main road. This property is actually owned by me. I purchased it with the adjacent properties to combine them back into a larger lot because that lot on its own is unsustainable. I don't know the intention of future generations or future owners. None of us do. So let's set our future up for success by setting sustainable expectations around development, which will support public health and our natural environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Edie Norris, and my address is 960 Cooper's Edge Trail, and I'm right below all this. So I'm like on the, right there on the road. And I'm concerned about all the traffic going up that little small driveway that was not meant for that. And my water, being contaminated from runoff from up above me, because I'm getting lots of new neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Rick Miller. I'm from 915 Cooper's Edge Trail. And I don't want to belabor the points that have been already made too much. I just want to give you a little context for the topography. This particular lot is in a bowl, and it has pretty steep sides, and it's a drainage area. And that area right above Edie's property tends to stay wet. There's about 100 by 100 foot long area that they would be trying to put a house, 2 septic fields, and a well in. And just from our personal experience, we have a 4-acre tract. My daughter has a 4-acre tract. We had challenges just finding 2 septic fields on 4 acres. The idea that you can find 2 septic fields, even for a tiny home on 0.4 acres, is stretching it quite a bit. If you want to think about how the lots are, think of North Chat. It's kind of like that. And so building is a challenge to begin with, and when you throw septic and wells on top of it, it becomes much more of a challenge. Access, Edie talked about traffic up the road. It's a 1-lane gravel road with 10% grade in a couple of places. We had a fire from another vacation rental that a neighbor put on property, and the fire trucks couldn't get up there. They couldn't get up to that property. We put in the driveway to go up to ours, and as long as there's nothing parked on that driveway, you can get a pumper truck up it anyway. But as soon as you start having people park on the road, there's no access for anything smaller or larger than a private vehicle. And so emergency vehicle access is an issue. Fitting it on the size of the property is an issue. Groundwater protection, as she mentioned, is an issue. And we would like for the staff to come out and take a look at it. Because I think when you see it, it becomes much more of a reality in terms of what's feasible and what's not. And we look forward to working with the county. We're not opposed to people developing the area. We've done it. We have a 15-acre tract. We have 4 cottages, and we have a venue. On that 15 acres, we had a challenge finding 4 septic field areas because it's like this. And so we just want to have clean water, access to emergency vehicles, and have something sustainable in the future. And we really look forward to working with people. But this particular project, the way it is probably not doable. And I don't want somebody to buy that property and be surprised when they can't build it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant? Sir, you've got 2 minutes if you want to respond to some of the comments.
Yes, sir. No, that was excellent. I can appreciate all those concerns. Again, we don't have plans to sell this lot. And of course, it would, when we talk about the concerns with the septic fields, if we're going to build something very small, strictly for my in-laws, then the septic tank would be commensurate with the size of, a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. But of course, that would all go through the applications, the septic application. So I think that we'd have to leave it up to the individual commissions or the individual licenses of who's going to, approve any soil for perk and as well as septic. So that's my rebuttal to that. Is this is just a first step of, can this even happen? And I didn't want to take the chance of building something if down the road I wouldn't be able to split it not for the near future, but for the distant future. But I understand those concerns, and I would just like to let the process play itself out.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff and or applicant? Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, remind us why we have the minimum flag lot size set to where it is and what hardships occur to grant a favorable.
Irregular shaped lots, steep lots, minimum acres, if it's a new subdivision, building new roads, you can do a flag lot, but it can meet the minimum R1 standard of 6,000 square foot. This planning commission left it. If you're not in a subdivision, you have to have 1 acre, because in theory, it's like a flag, little stream coming up, and then you have to have enough land area in the back to build your home. Typically, these are on septic for the most part. Yes, he may do less than an acre, but once he goes through health department or groundwater protection, they may require a much larger lot than what he's proposed. Because septic tank is not part of this application right now. This is just a variance. And there's other steps he'll have to go through.
And that leads me to my next question. I know about the permitting process, but it feels like that's a very strong concern at this point, whether or not it's even feasible. And we have no way of knowing that at this point.
You don't until he goes through groundwater protection. They may, again, as part of that, he may get the variance from this body. That's not approving the plat. We have no plat in front of us yet. He'll then go through that stage. And it's part of that. Groundwater protection say, yeah, you have enough area to do a small septic tank. We're good with it. Or no, you need to increase the lot area to get your duplicate. So it could increase the size depending on what happens at that review.
So hearing the concerns, and obviously I'm going to have to lean on the folks who live there, who know the area the best. Is there a way to know some of this information before having it kind of in your back pocket, so to speak, before you grant a variance to something that may never come to fruition?
Not really, because he'd have to spend several $1,000s to do a survey to lay this out, not knowing if he can even get the variance to start with.
So let me throw that question back to the applicant. You're willing to ask for, well, the variance, whether you get it or not, has no real bearing, because down the road, if you find out you can't, then you still have the variance and the whole thing really becomes a moot point.
That's correct. And the variance is for how small. So if I have to increase the size, then the variance is already approved, is the way that I see it, because it's kind of a limiting factor, right? But the plat would be commensurate with the groundwater application and an actual survey, which is indeed a couple of $1,000s. So I wanted to just take it one step at a time through the process. Correct.
Unfortunately, yeah. And sometimes I feel like the process is putting the cart in front of the horse.
Right.
But that's the process. So I do see the concerns of the neighbors knowing the topography. So I do hear their concerns.
And additionally, excuse me. I mean, I've got a house coming up, on the major part, right where the 938, as we're looking at it, where the numbers are, that's my house.
And you're able to build, and I applaud you for taking care of your in-laws. That's awesome. I plan to do something very similar when that time comes, and it's creeping up very quickly. But you're able to do that without the variance.
Oh, correct. The house is coming up, and
the variance is not contingent on whether or not you are able to take care of your in-laws. I wonder.
No,
Okay.
no, sir, not
Okay.
at all.
Right. Because that would also be very important to me, but I do see the concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments and or questions? Mr. Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think I echo some of the sentiments that Councilman Ledford was saying, that to me, it kind of feels like the process, if I was laying it out, would be to do my due diligence on how much property I needed prior to asking for a variance, because it may not even be necessary. And it seems like the steps of the process may be a little bit out of order for the way that I would personally go about it. And I think, given some of the concerns, which I think are valid concerns, I would ask, I'd make a motion to deny, but I'd also allow you to withdraw it if you'd rather, so that we don't lock it into, because if it gets denied, what would happen?
Nothing. In like a zoning case, if it's denied, he can come back the following month.
Okay.
That doesn't impact him in terms of waiting period.
I'll make a motion to deny the variance request.
Okay, have a motion to deny has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion to deny, say aye. Any opposed? One opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we will move to new business on the agenda. First item is case 2024-0017. It's located at 1921 Central Avenue. It's to rezone from M1 manufacturing zone to RTZ residential townhouse 0 lot line zone. Is the applicant present? Okay, is there any opposition? I believe there were a couple.
Yeah,
Mr.
Chairman,
Schultz.
we don't really have opposition. I don't think they can be here today, but they are watching the Planning Commission via live stream. They just had some questions. I don't know if we could ask the applicant to understand.
Sir, if you would come up there, just a brief, any objections? Okay. Yeah, your name and address, and then I think Mr. Schultz did have a couple of quick questions. Yes, sir.
My name is Lee Helena, 1011 Oak Street.
Okay.
Sure. And these seem like they're more related to construction, not necessarily the zoning questions. I'll ask them. Will the city consider reopening the alley behind the vacant lot for residents on this street?
My understanding is that it's an open alley. It's just not open to city services. That's why on the map it says unopened. It's not closed. It just states as unopened. So any of those residents can use it. It's just overgrown. And I plan, as a part of my application, to use the alley. So it would be on me to clear it out in order to be able to use it.
And I've got a comment from Mr. Anderson.
Lee, I have no financial interest in this, but I do live about a block from there, so I drive by it every day. I will tell you that every day and every night there was a pickup truck and a sedan blocking that alley.
Got it.
So you will need a plan to deal with that.
Okay.
Because two people who front Central Avenue, there's one house, they use that as their driveway.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank
Next.
And maybe as part of that and an improvement on that, you maybe can deal with that.
Okay.
Mr.
Next
Schultz.
question. Given that there is limited parking for current neighbors, what is the plan for construction trucks likely being parked in the street driving lane? And how will safety be supported by the neighbors trying to merge onto Central Avenue with obstructed view?
That's just a general question that happens on every single construction site. It is small, but I'm just doing a really small house, and I'm confident that I can get all construction vehicles through the alley to the back of the parcel.
Okay.
I'm staying 30 feet off the rear property line. So it's 40 feet wide. You can get 5 vehicles back there.
Okay.
Take away one for construction dumpster. You still have 4 vehicles.
Okay. The third and final question is the manufacturing zone lot part of the neighboring brownfield site? If so, how will safety of neighbors be considered during construction? So I assume we're talking about the lot to the north.
I looked at, I'm not sure which one is considered brownfield. I reached out to Troy Keith and TDEC about the brownfields in this area, and the only one that I was aware of is directly across the street, and my parcel is not included in that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that was
Thank
all
you.
the questions.
Was there any opposition? There is a staff recommendation to approve. I appreciate your willingness on those couple of questions, which weren't necessarily zoning, but there are obviously interest in how that construction proceeds in that area. So thank you. Any questions for staff and or the applicant? Okay, I have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next two items have been withdrawn, so we'll move to case 2024-0020. It's located at 12132 Dolly Pond Road. It's a special permit for a single wide manufactured home. There has a staff recommendation to approve. Any opposition to this case? It's the applicant. Okay. Okay. Have a staff recommendation to approve a single wide manufactured home on this lot. No, I did not see any opposition. If okay, have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Case 2024-0023 is located at 6745 Customer Delight Drive. Is to rezone from R1 residential zone to R3 residential zone with conditions. As a staff recommendation to deny. Is the applicant present? Okay. Is there opposition to this case? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we do have opposition emails. I think there's a petition in front of you that we received from the opposition as well.
Yes, this one.
Yes.
Okay. If you'll take us through that, Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is case 2024-23. This is a request to rezone from R1 residential zone to R3 residential zone with conditions. Proposed use is multifamily residential or multi-unit residential. It's roughly 11 acres in size. Number of proposed units is 232. That's a density of roughly 21 dwelling units per acre. That's a little more than currently allowed in the R3. So that number will have to drop to comply with the existing R3 zone density requirements. Look at the zoning map on the screen. To the north of this site along Dupree Road, that's zoned R1 and R2. To the east along Hickory Valley Road is R1. To the south, immediately abutting this property is RT1, which is a townhome development. And to the west along Lee Highway is commercial C2 and R4. The R4 is, I think, a T-Mobile or a call center. But then those uses along the highway are commercial uses. There is no R3 in this general vicinity at this point. The applicant did provide 3 conditions with the application. The type B 20-foot landscape buffer located along the perimeter of the development where the development adjoins R1 zoning. Lighting to be directed away from residential areas. 3-story apartment buildings shall be located no closer than 100 feet to the southern and northern property line boundaries. And a clubhouse and pool shall be made part of this development. Those are the 4 conditions at the time of the application the applicant provided. This case has some history. The site has some history on it. There was a PUD on this property from 1979. That PUD was abandoned in 1987. Then there's been some street closures nearby on this property. And in the southeast of this property, you can see that property was rezoned from R1 to RTZ. Then the closest R3 is about 1 mile, 2 miles down the road on Vance Road. That was rezoned in 2022 to R3. It's currently a vacant piece of property. To the north, immediately abutting this property is single unit residential or single family. To the east is a church, institutional use along Hickory Valley. To the south, immediately abutting this property are townhomes. Southwest or office is office use, which is a mobile call center. And to the west, fronting Lee Highway is commercial and office uses. There are a little bit of slopes on this side, which is indicated by the yellow on the property. So nothing too major, but there are some little ridges of slopes on it. Here's a view of the site. Another view of the site and the sign on the property. This is the intersection into the property at Customer Delight and Lee Highway. This is the commercial zone or uses that you see at Lee Highway. This is north of the site, which is in the single-family dwellings. This is south of the site, which is those townhomes that immediately abut the site. This is east of the site, which is the church. This is west of the site, which is the office. This property is located in the Shalford Road Lee Highway plan, which was adopted in 2005. The plan recommends medium density residential, which is primarily single unit dwellings, townhomes and patio homes, and 2 to 4 unit dwellings if the density is compatible. As you can see in the plan goes, the plan recommendation, it does not specifically call out multi-unit or multifamily dwellings as the land use at this location. There's a closer view of that land use designation. So staff looked at this and felt the request is not compatible with Shalford Road Lee Highway plan. It would not be compatible with surrounding land uses or development form. Proposed high density residential is not compatible with the medium density residential area in the area. Hickory Valley Road has a significantly lower density, which would be incompatible with R3. Staff felt RT1, RTZ, which is townhomes, would be more appropriate at this location and would be supported by the plan goes of the Shalford Road Lee Highway plan. So staff recommended to deny. At the same time, we're also going through new land use planning in the city of Chattanooga that may provide guidance in the future, whether we should increase the density at this location or introduce multifamily. We just don't have that currently in place. So we were falling back on the currently adopted plan, which would not support this use at this location. So staff recommends to deny.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? Okay. Name and address, please.
Thank you. Mike Price, MAP Engineer, 7380 Applegate Lane. I'd like to pass out an amended conditions as it relates after a neighborhood meeting.
And I have those on the screen. I think the same ones from January.
There should be
23rd.
10 conditions.
Yes.
Okay. One housekeeping or a couple of housekeeping items. The actual acreage of the site is 13.72 acres. Staff is correct that we were asking to rezone 11 acres, but when you take the 13.7 acres, the density is not 21.09, but instead it is 16.9. So it does fall within what is allowed in an R3 zone out of that. So the request is to rezone 11 acres. You already have some that is already zoned R4. As staff has mentioned, the study was completed in 2005. This is a 19-year-old study, and I do believe that a new updated study, given the changes that have taken place in the Chattanooga area since this study was completed, would reflect a far different result. Let me first point out that we had a neighborhood meeting. There were some 40 people in attendance. Out of that meeting, we born these 10 conditions that you see here before you as it relates to proposed conditions should this go through. Those were sent to members of the people that attended the meeting, and so they've had a chance to look at those since that meeting. The access will come out to Old Lee Highway where there's a traffic signal. If you look at where the property is, we're bounded by the church on the east. We're bounded by RTZ zoning to the south of us in Hickory Valley Manor. And I would point out that the density in there is some 9.3 units per acre. 9.3 is to the south of us. To the west of us, we have the call center, large parking lot. You have an office development. You have a gas station. So when the meeting took place with the residents, one of the major concerns was dealing with traffic. There was somewhat of a split in the room in terms of what people wanted to see. There were some that said, we want you to have your access coming out to Hickory Valley Road, coming through the church property. And others said that, no, we don't want that. We would rather you go out to the traffic signal. We took a vote, did the democratic process. Basically, at the end of the day, those that were in the majority were those that said, take the access out to Old Lee Highway to the traffic signal, which in my mind is the right thing to do. We are required to have a secondary access, which we've worked out with Ridgedale Baptist Church, but it is to be used only in emergency situations. So we do have 2 access points, but the access going to North Hickory Valley Road will only occur in the instance that we have some emergency that's taking place. And I think that's the right move, because you're able to take the residents that would live in this development, come out to Old Lee Highway, come out to a traffic signal, be able to turn left, then you can get on 153 and go either towards the river or head south or west, any direction you need to go. So your access is really viable here, very good in terms of getting in and out of the development. The 10 conditions that we put, basically, if you look at the plan, was to try and force the development more towards the center and away from the residents to the south and to the north of us. We actually went through and we had some renderings done that gave an idea of what these homes would look like, which you can see here on the board. So we sort of looked at, again, this is a Class A type development. We then looked at to see, if you go back a couple of shots, thank you. We wanted to see what would it look like in terms of the view from those residents there on Rado. Well, if you look, what you see here, and those trees are only at 20 feet at height at the time of planting. What that shows is your line of sight, if you're in the back door looking out, is you basically see right up over the top. You don't really see the development occur. So by putting the conditions where we pushed all the 3-story buildings at least 100 feet to the interior, we only have a few 2-story buildings or 1-story buildings on the exterior. And given that we've increased the buffer requirements from 10 feet to 20 feet, running around adjacent to the residential areas, we think that this is the proper plan for this particular location, given the access to Carta that would residents could have out to Ole Highway. And we think that this is the right plan for the area. So if there's any questions, be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Whoever would like to come, y'all have 9 minutes if you'd like to, and your name and address, please.
Larry Turk, 6719 Hickory Manor Circle. I live in the townhouse development adjacent to this, which Mr. Price did point out the density, but we're all owner occupied. So we have more of an interest in maintaining our properties than renters would in an apartment complex, which I think you get enough requests for rezoning here on apartments that at some point there's probably going to be a glut in Chattanooga with what's being built. And by nature of what they are, the owners of these apartments will be less restrictive on the enforcement of their rules and regulations and their applicants that are applying, and possibly will start reducing their rents to meet their mortgage requirements. The original plan here, as I understand it, was for townhouses, owner occupied, which wouldn't have as much objection to that because they're going to take better care of the property than renters are just by nature of what they are. And Mr. Price did address the rear entrance that would be required as long as it's for emergency personnel only. I don't think that would be objectionable. We just wouldn't want all the traffic going to Hickory Valley Road. It would have to go through the church parking lot, and that end of the church is where they have their daycare, which would not be a good condition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jane Trapnell, and I live at 6757 Dupree, and I am on the corner of Dupree and Hickory Valley. I wrote out my thoughts. I didn't want to take up a lot of your time and allow other people to say what they needed to say. My dad built our home in 1967. The Mary Dupree neighborhood was a great place to grow up, and East Brainerd was a very rural place for many, many years. All that changed in 1986 when we'd read about a proposed mall coming off I-75. My dad even made the comment at the time, why is anybody going to come all the way over here to a mall? Well, within a few years, Hamilton Place Mall became more developed. We noticed more and more traffic coming down our street as people found it was an easy shortcut over to the Gun Barrel Road area. Dupree neighbors voiced their concerns about speeding cars to the city, and soon we had double lines and speed humps installed on our residential street. As the development sprawl has continued, more and more traffic has come down Dupree, and at this point, people simply ignore or straddle the speed humps as they hurriedly make their way over to Gun Barrel. And I want to make a note that Lee Highway and Gun Barrel Road were 2-lane roads in 1967. When you know what Lee Highway looks like now, well, Hickory Valley is still 2 lanes, and it's absorbing all this traffic that's coming to the mall. Hundreds of cars use our streets daily as the cut through to Gun Barrel Road. At times, there are 10 to 15 cars lined up in front of my house trying to turn left onto Hickory Valley Road. Then they turn right, either onto Bacon Lane, or they go up to Jesse Connor Road, who also have speed humps on their residential street, then onto Elmore Drive, and then over to poor people on Igo Gap, down to Gun Barrel. All of us in this area have seen the quality of our lives negatively impacted by traffic noise, especially of loud vehicles and blaring car radios, speeding, and trash strewn everywhere from motorists who simply disrespect the presence of our homes entirely. Our neighborhoods and homes no longer feel like safe sanctuaries in the middle of all this noise and traffic, and it's been heartbreaking to all of us. The very last thing we need is a 232 unit apartment complex built between our street and another residential area, Hickory Manor Townhomes. Contrary to what Mr. Price thinks, all those people are going to go to that traffic light, take a right, and then come down Dupree to go to the mall. We know that's what's going to happen. And the impact of having an additional 500 plus cars using our residential streets is just unthinkable. We understand this land is going to be developed, but we ask that it please remain zoned R1 or at the least R2 or even RTZ. We're okay with that. We're tax-paying citizens. We deserve a voice in what will very negatively impact our already decreased quality of life. In closing, I would simply ask you, if I were making this decision for your street, knowing this, how would you want me to vote? Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of our plight. And the 137 of us who have signed a petition against this, they're counting on you to hear us.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, thank you in advance for your time and attention. My name is Taylor Woodruff. I live at 6742 Dupree Road, making me the third generation in my family to have Providence on Dupree Road. My home shares a property line with the proposed development. To preface, all the information provided by Jane, as well as that I'm about to present, has all been communicated to our representative, City Councilwoman Burrs. In the interest of everyone's time, I don't want to redundantly reiterate everything that my neighbor Jane has presented to you. I will just simply say ditto and amen to the history of our quaint neighborhood and the context that she's provided as to why we're here speaking on behalf of our neighborhood. As she mentioned, there are 137 of us that are appealing for your consideration. That number, 137, is evidenced by our petition that I believe was provided to you all prior to today's hearing. Please note that all represented on this petition are residents of Hickory Valley Road, Dupree Road, Mary Dupree Drive, Bacon Lane, Jesse Connor Road, Elmer Drive, and Hickory Manor Circle. Today, all 137 of us, as well as those who didn't have the opportunity to sign our petition, are making this one request. If you will not flat out deny this project based on the information and the signatures that we've provided, we do strongly urge you to exercise due diligence in delaying your vote until a full traffic assessment has been conducted. One that includes the entirety of Lee Highway, as well as the aforementioned roads from our petition residents. At the rapid rate of speed that Chattanooga is growing, we do understand that development of this property is inevitable someday. However, following this necessary traffic study, we're confident that its findings will provide ample information to keep it zoned as R1 or at the very least R2 and RTZ. Thank you again for your time and attention and for your service to Hamilton County and Chattanooga.
Thank you. Yes, sir. It's about 2 minutes.
I won't need that much. I live in Charlton Rogers. I live at 6730 Dupree. I've lived there for 3 years. In that time, my wife and I have experienced great difficulties backing out of our driveways onto Dupree because of traffic cutting through from Lee going to Hickory Valley or vice versa. There have been days that the traffic has been backed up trying to gain access onto Lee. And if it's an easy cutout, people are going to continue to use it. It's just going to worsen. For that reason, I ask you to consider not to approve it. We have difficulties. You know, if I have an emergency, I can't get on my driveway. What am I supposed to do? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any questions from Commission? Mr. Price.
Thank you. So I would first point out that we have no access to Dupree. What this is really a discussion about is how people in this area use it as a cut through. I'll admit I'm one that has done that. So sometimes I do use that as a cut through, as do others. The times that I have used it, which are at different periods of the day and evening, It doesn't take me that long to go through. If it did, and what's been described here, I would have picked another route. So I don't find that the experience that has necessarily been communicated here is what I have experienced personally when taking that as a cut through and going through Bacon and getting my way over to the mall area. That being said, we will conduct a traffic study. I told the people that were at the public meeting that honestly, I did not think that the traffic study was going to show anything that would resolve their concerns as it relates to Dupree and how that is used as a cut through. But I also, by the same token, said that I did not believe that every resident every day coming out of here was going to be using it. A few would, few will, but will it change the conditions that they currently face? I just do not see it based upon the numbers and what's proposed and how the access comes out to Lee Highway. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Any questions for staff and or the applicant from the commission?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So,
Mr. Hall.
Brian, can you go back to the elevations, the site distance elevation? Yeah. So if you're, Mr. Price, this is looking from the rear of one of the either single family or multifamily homes?
To the homes on Dupree.
Okay. And so from the front of their properties, they would visibly see a towering apartment complex, though, correct?
No, if you actually flip to the other side of the house, you wouldn't see over the top of the house. You'd have to go out to the road and we'd have to cut the sight lines. But I do not believe that they're still going to see the townhouses, which again are located some minimum 100 feet from the property line. And given the depth of their houses or lots, you're now talking from the front of the road, roughly 200 and something feet plus the distance from where you would be standing versus where you're looking at where the apartments would be located.
I might see that differently, but I understand what you're saying. So my other question was about the secondary entrance, and then I read a second condition number 7 is a secondary entrance from the church, and then condition number 8 is that they're gated with operational gates at both entrances.
That's correct.
How does that work?
So they'll have Knox boxes so that emergency personnel, if they pull up to the gate, will be able to just hit a tone and then those gates open for emergency vehicles. But the residents that will be there will have the ability to have fobs or whatever that will open the gates and plus a gate code. But access will not be granted to the residents to come out to the church. That is something that was not desired by the church, and it was not desired by the residents that based upon the vote that we took there in the public meeting.
Fairly familiar with the terrain there. I just don't think this is a nice transition to either the adjacent properties.
And following up on that Commissioner Holland's question, the zoning code has a condition in this is R3 or multifamily or commercial zoning cannot be actually residentially zoned property, or the church is zoned residential. For secondary access, I mean, he may be able to work that out, but as far as it being a primary access, that wouldn't be permitted under the zoning code.
The other thing that I would point out is you don't have the ability to construct public roads into this property. So it really limits you in a lot of ways in what you can and can't do with it, which makes apartments, in my mind, again, the best use for the land. And the topography actually works for you, not against you in apartments. It works against you in townhouses because the way that you're having to transition the grades and work your way up the slope, it's far easier to do that with apartments versus townhouses.
Any other questions from staff? I mean, from Planning Commission or for staff or applicant or other? Mr. Brown.
13 acres. Walk me through that one more time, because I know we're talking 11 versus 13 and the density changes some. Help me understand that.
So there's a total of 13.72 acres.
Okay.
Of that, 2.7 acres was already zoned R4. Okay. So we did not have to rezone that. 11 acres was what the ask was to take from R1 to R3. That's correct.
Other Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, walk me through the front entrance. Brian, if you'll take me to that slide.
The site plan.
Yes, sir. So the entrance is off of Customer Delight.
Correct.
So you turn off to Lee Highway, and then, well, basically a road into, that would be your front yard.
That would be our front entrance
Okay,
door.
so
Yes, sir.
that's, to me, that's Lee Highway.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the second part, I see a light green. Explain that light green. Is that just a right of way that you've worked out with the church?
The light green that runs around the perimeter of the property is a landscape buffering that we're
I'm sorry, you're
requiring.
the very, very top in the small box.
So there is a strip of land that runs out to North Hickory Valley Road. And we really did not see it as a viable use coming through there. There's actually some drainage that works its way down through that portion. So what we actually felt is if we get our request, what we will do is donate that land to the church, which they can use in terms of expanding out their parking should that need occur in the future. But we did not see any reason to construct or utilize that land that backs up behind those three residences.
Is it the intent of the developer to have the secondary entrance? And I know that it's required because we're over 200 units. Is it the intent to have that strictly used as an emergency exit? Or will you have a key fob that, and I'm slipping out the back way today?
So again, the intent and the way it will be set up is it will not be able to be used by residents on a daily basis, simply only by emergency services. Now, emergency services, so let's just say that we have some calamity that occurs at Lee Highway that prevents the access from getting out. People would be able to travel both in and out in that rare situation coming through the church property. But if as soon as the situation would be resolved, then access is shut off. And again, you go back to Lee Highway as far as your entrance and exit.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And maybe to help with on this site plan, I think you can see the little red dot. Everything to the left of that dot, that's the R4 that Mike's talking about, where the clubhouse and pool, that's the R4. Even though it's on the site plan, that's not a part of this rezoning request. That's where the difference in acres is coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, I forgot to ask, looking at the heat map, does this have any 30% above grade steep slopes that would kick in our vegetation component?
Pretty rare. For the most part, your slopes are somewhere between the 10 to 20, 22% thereabouts. Very, very minimal areas that might hit that 30% for short distances, but overall, no.
Okay, last question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Brian, you mentioned the access zoning prohibits an access through R1. That intrigued me.
Well, there's a thing in the zoning code that you cannot primarily access R3, which is apartments, or commercial through residentially zoned property. That's property. In this case, it would be property because it's not right away. It's property. Now, if it's secondary access, that'd be an LDO concern. But if that was the primary access to that church, that couldn't happen.
Even though it's abutted to other industrial or
Correct.
commercial property?
Correct. I'm talking to the church to the south.
I'm going to the front
Yeah,
side.
to the front.
Lee Highway
That
side.
is zone commercial. Go back.
Okay.
That is zone commercial in R4. It's a
Okay.
public right of way
So-
here. And then it looks like it's a private right of way over to the applicant's
What
property.
you were referring to in the second, was the second entrance.
Yes,
coming through the church
correct.
parking lot.
Yes. Now, if this along Lee Highway was zoned R1, you couldn't access it. It'd have to be rezoned as well.
Okay, I'm clear on that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any other questions and or comments and or motions?
Motion to deny.
Okay, I have a motion to deny. Is there a second? Motion fails. Is there a different motion? I have a motion to approve with the 10 conditions as presented. Has been seconded. Discussion on that motion.
One comment. Brian, you
Yes, sir.
mentioned the area plan. What is the time frame for the staff to kind of review that and get that updated? I
We're
know
go-
that's
We're going through that now. I think Dan would want them quicker than what we're going through now, but I'm guessing anywhere from 3 to 6 months before realistically having something for this body for adoption.
okay. Thank you.
Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
Just a quick question for Mr. Price. You've had a community meeting, I know, which is extremely important. Do you plan on having another community meeting? And do you know if Dr. Burrs will be available to meet or has committed to meeting?
She was aware of the first meeting. She was unable to attend due to a conflict. Wasn't planning on having a second community meeting, but certainly am not opposed to that, depending upon what the residents might want to do. So if we need to have one, we certainly can do so.
And the reason I bring that up is because this is a recommendation moving forward to council. Now that we have these 10 conditions came out of your initial meeting. So these 10 conditions have not been, I guess, properly presented to everybody who wanted to attend the meeting. Am I correct in saying that?
We gave or sent those out by email with the addresses that we had,
Understood.
but that may not have called everybody to your point. Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's what I want to make sure is people have an opportunity to discuss those 10 conditions that came out of that. The more we meet, the better, Mike. That's where I'm trying to go with that.
No disagree.
To make sure that everyone has a chance to voice their opinions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on we are discussing and we do have a motion to approve.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes, sir.
with Mr. Ledford. The individuals behind the gentleman seem not to attend the meeting, and I'm just curious, why is there such a conflict? He's got people who are on board, but then you've got all of these individuals who seem to be opposed. So who came to the meeting?
Well, okay. And I think to the comment, I think more meetings would be helpful. And I think the applicant had maybe made that comment that they would reach out to the council person. This will go to city council. And so is that true? You will look
Yes.
into if need be. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
And what's the date for that council meeting?
Should be March 12th.
Okay. So it will go, this is a recommendation from this board. It'll go to city council on March 12th.
At 6 p.m.
6
City
p.m.
Council chambers.
Thank you.
Barring any deferral or something like that. Council.
Correct. Okay, next item on the agenda is a mandatory referral, MR 2024-0024. It's located at RP Central Avenue. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the applicant. It's located at 2200 block of April Street. It's again, a mandatory referral. Right-of-way closure has a staff recommendation to approve. Let me give the audience. Again, this is a mandatory referral 2024-0024. Is there anybody opposed that would like to speak? Okay. I have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Give it a minute to clear. Okay, we'll move on. Case number 2024-0025. It's located at 7712 in part and 7620 Snow Hill Road. It's a residential planned unit development abandonment. It's got a staff recommendation to deny. Is the applicant here? Okay, is there any opposition here?
Mr. Chairman, I think we did receive an email in opposition
Okay.
as well.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, if you'll take us through this, and I'll add any context if I need to. But
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is case 2024-25. This is a request for an abandonment of a special permit for planned unit development. The proposed use of this property is single unit residential. It's roughly 15.5 acres in size. Number of units proposed to be developed in this site is 12. That's a density of roughly 1.25 dwelling units per acre. Looking at the zoning map, again, this is not a rezoning. This is abandonment of existing PUD. This property, as well as the property to the east or right to the next door of this, were included in 2 separate PUDs, I think last year or 2022. To the south is a R1 PUD. To the west, across Snow Hill Road, is a A1 PUD. And to the north is A1, another PUD in that direction. Again, this is the property. It's vacant as well as part of the golf course. To the east of this side's townhomes. To the south is single unit residential. To the west across Snow Hill Road is single unit residential. Here's a view of the site looking towards the townhomes. Another view of the site. This is north of the site, single family dwellings. South of the site, Hampton on the Lake, across Snow Hill Road, single family dwellings. Again, Snow Hill Road, site's on the right hand side. This property is located in the Wolf Beaver Creek Area Plan, which was adopted in 2007. It recommends low intensity residential, which is primarily detached single unit dwellings with a density of 3 dwellings per acre. Here's a closer view of that. Actually has 2 designations as a reserve for, I guess that's the golf course, and low intensity residential. This PUD was approved originally with 57 residential lots with 1 primary access point. The change that was submitted was to change from 57 lots to 12 lots with 12 individual curb cuts. Because of that change, this is considered a major change. Therefore, the applicant has to come back through to either amend the PUD or to abandon the PUD. It's not a major change going from 57 lots to 12. The change is going from 1 access point to 12 individual curb cuts along Snow Hill Road. Again, the site is limited to 57 lots based on the approved PUD plan. If the PUD is abandoned, it falls back to the existing R1 zoning underneath, which could increase the density to 7.26 dwelling units per acre. That's a gross lot yield of 108. Once the PUD's abandoned, there's nothing that would stop the applicant or anybody from building more than 12 lots. So that's why staff recommended to just amend the PUD. Go back through the PUD process to amend the PUD to show 12 lots with either one curb cut or with 12 individual curb cuts. We still have the same issue with 12 curb cuts along Snow Hill Road being a safety issue. Staff would prefer the 1 curb cut. I have site plans to show. This is the original PUD plan, or actually what is approved on the site. You can see it's 1 curb cut off Snow Hill Road with 57 individual lots with 1 access. This is the new proposed plan. You can see it goes from 57 dwelling units to 12, but from 1 curb cut, now all of a sudden you got 12 curb cuts on Snow Hill Road. Yeah, that's why staff is taking an approach of amending the PUD to match this with 1 access, 1 curb cut.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. And this, we did have some internal conversations about this, and I do think it's important. I think the expectation through the zoning process in the community is to have 1 curb cut and 57 homes. So we did agree with planning commit or RPA staff that all of a sudden, although under R1 zoning, not having a PUD potentially could have done this exact site plan, there was a expectation through a zoning process that there was 1 curb cut. And so that change necessitated an abandonment process. So anyway, this is a case to abandon the current PUD. And so anyway, I just offer that. But Mr. Chambers, if you would go ahead. Yeah, Mr. Abe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Schultz, if the PUD was dropped, can they do that? The 12 homes by right in R1 as it sits? Okay.
Yes, that is correct. If the PUD is abandoned, you can do 12 after shown, or even more, quite frankly. But I mean, I'm not sure. There's nothing that controls 12 units because we can't, since this PUD's being abandoned, you can't put conditions on it. It's like that PUD never existed.
Okay.
So that opens it up to R1 to be developed. How many lots you can get in there? No, it's not rezoning this. It's already zoned R1. This is a PUD abandonment. This is a little weird, and that's abandoning a PUD. But frankly, I think if you came in and just showed a revised site plan with 12 lots with one access, that would be a staff level decision.
You just answered my question. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chambers, name and address.
Sure. Rocky Chambers with Chattanooga Engineering Group. We're at 400 East Main Street here in Chattanooga. And this is an unusual request and unusual in a lot of different ways. One is, as was mentioned, we're doing less density and less traffic in Ooltewah, and we have a recommendation to deny. So that's new to me. But yeah, I think Brian did a great job of presenting the case here. Certainly the intent is to just build the 12 lots instead of the 57 that was shown before. Which I understand staff's concern about 12 different driveways instead of one. I still believe that having 20 or 30 cars in the morning instead of 150 down Snow Hill is still safer, even though it's spread over more than one location. So while I understand there's more potential conflicting traffic movement locations, the overall number of conflicting traffic movements is less. So yeah, certainly we have a developer now wanting to do less density and make less money and provide less traffic in Ooltewah than he has approval for right now. The idea of building a road and having a shared drive for 12 lots just doesn't really work. And so it really is kind of one of those either or things. If we're going to build a road that comes off of Snow Hill Road and then provides access to the entire property, that's an additional expense. They're going to have to get some additional density to cover that cost for. So it really kind of is one of those either or situations where we can do a single point of access and do some more density, or we can have more of a traditional neighborhood with individual driveways and low density that I believe all the neighbors are kind of fighting for in the Ooltewah area. So that's all I've got right now, unless you have questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Would you like to speak? Just name and address.
My name is Deborah Torres. My address is 8146 Double Eagle Court. I actually live in the Hamptons where the PUD was changed. And actually, I'm not here in opposition of the proposal and the proposed change. I'm here as an advocate for the change. I would like to give you just a little overview of how we reached this point. First of all, our PUD, the Hamptons, adjoins with Hampton Creek. So by lessening to 12 homes rather than 57, obviously that does lower the density. It also will make it more fitting with the character of the neighborhoods that surround us. We're surrounded by Hampton Cove, Hampton on the Lake, the Hamptons, Hampton Creek, and all of these subdivisions are really higher end subdivision. By lowering to 12, it does comply with a better character of the neighborhoods that's already surrounding us, and not so many homes piled up on top of each other. Also, it will make our lots more valuable, and having the larger lots is just more appeasing to the surrounding, the surrounding neighborhoods. I'm not going to be redundant. You guys are smart. It lessens the traffic on Snow Hill Road. You've already approved a lot of large developments on Snow Hill Road, and Snow Hill Road now is extremely congested. We're obviously worried about the infrastructure on Snow Hill Road. So you would go from 57, possibly 114 cars to 12 to 24 cars. That lowers the impact that of entrance and on Snow Hill Road. Also, the impact of schools, the impact of the water waste that sits right there in our neighborhood, and the utilities. So there are a lot of variables here to consider, but I'm standing here as an advocate along with Hampton Creek leadership and the Hamptons leadership. We want to see this change made because we feel like it will be better for our community as a whole. Thank you for your ears.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Appreciate you all's time. My name is Wayne Rich. I live at 8261 Double Eagle Court. I've lived in this area for 29 years. I joined in the two previous speakers. Strongly urge you to approve of the abandonment so Mr. Stern can build those 12 houses. It adds 11 more driveways, but across the street, all along that area, there are no other driveways fully developed. There's an entrance to one PUD. So we have a unique situation and we're not stacking a bunch of driveways along one side with a bunch on the other side, and to the north and south on Snow Hill Road, there aren't a bunch of driveways. Matter of fact, from the 4 miles, I timed it today, from the 4 miles from the far end of his development south to where you enter Publix across from the Life Care Center, there are probably 60 driveways. And then when you get in our area, there just aren't any. So this will have an impact, yes, of more driveways, but it offsets the number of people driving the road, the impact on school and sewage. And it really, on an ecological standpoint, there are a number of mature oak trees on that property, anywhere 75 years old approximately. And Mr. Stearns made an effort when he redesigned this to preserve those trees. So it's not going to be, if we build the 57, it's going to be a disaster. It'll be this typical clear cut you see with little trees about this high. And that would be out of keeping with the neighbors to the east and west and south. Thank you. I really urge you all to do this. Thank you very much.
Councilman Ledford, I think Councilman Ledford has one question.
Colonel, I got an engineering question for you.
There's lots of luck on that. Combat engineers are the same as the big time ones.
Is the line of sight, in your opinion, I'm asking strictly your opinion, is the line of sight entering into these driveways? I'm not going to ask you for a yes or no, but is it conducive to what is being asked, in your opinion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said this has been sensitive in nature to what the area has been asking for. Would that also be a correct statement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I haven't heard one person is not elated over this change because of what it does for the environment and ecological standpoint. Because you all know what's happening on Snow Hill and a lot of other areas of the county. And this will preserve that natural beauty, and the residents will be consistent with the residents surrounding it. I don't live in one of those high-end residences. Yeah. So I couldn't afford the lot.
Well, the reason I'm asking this question, because this is a different path for us on Snow Hill Road to actually reduce density.
Absolutely.
And reverse course, so to speak. So, and given that I know that area is undergoing a study by RPA, this is very interesting to see what's coming out of this in regards to a reverse in the density on this particular PUD.
You're reversing the density and you're preserving the ecological and natural beauty there.
Okay.
And we have a responsible person, Rick Stern, wanting to do it. Okay. It's not somebody who will come in double crosses and put 100 residents in there. Somebody's not that kind of guy.
Colonel, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can staff follow up real quick on
Sure.
Just to put it out there, if it sounds like we've had people in support, staff would recommend, instead of abandon the PUD, amend the PUD to this PUD plan is shown, but still control. That way you have a control of the number of lots.
Well, I was going to make some comments after the fact, so let's hear the last. But I think you make some great points, and I think you should make that relative to abandonment of the PUD. Yes, ma'am.
Kim Helton, 8618 Snow Hill Road, and we are elated about the drop in lots to 12. Just the concerns about the driveway entrances around the curve, and then there's the hill there. It was reworked already one time. It was really bad before that, and it was straightened out somewhat, not completely, when all that construction went on. And there were numerous wrecks there at that time. So just a concern about the site distance, and for 12 driveways, that would be 12 stops for buses and garbage trucks and mail carriers and all those things. And maybe some of the site distance on some of them over to the right seemed a little concerning. And the other thing is the protection, as was mentioned about the R1, there would be nothing saying that if something unforeseen happened, this property was sold or there had to be a change made, there would be no protections that would say they couldn't build 100 something because they could in an R1. So that would be the only concerns. But of course, we're elated that it's just 12. We just want to be sure it stays 12 and that the site distances are okay. And we would really like to see the one entrance in a safer place for all the reasons that I said. But of course, we're happy about it. We just want some of those protections there if we can get them.
Thank you. Mr. Chambers, you want to come back up and then respond a little bit? If you've got it, I mean, you may not have anything to say. Let me offer a little bit, because I think it is important to understand what we're talking about. And the reason why, if you abandon the PUD, it goes back to R1. I think this body does have some opportunity to control through this process. I believe I understood Mr. Schultz correctly, but the other important thing related to this is I would agree with a lot of what Mr. Chambers said, and even the community. But when we go through processes to delineate rezoning and or PUDs, and we determine how many curb cuts and determine density, I do think it's an appropriate process, at least relative to expectations of the community, to go back through a process where it can be at least discussed relative to those impacts. And the only other thing I'll add, and I think this is important for this body, as we move through a process with RPA to redo subdivision regulations on allowable curb cuts, because currently unincorporated Hamilton County, there is no control relative to the type of roads and the amount of curb cuts for private property for accessing single family homes. We are talking now about classifying our roads, and then also through the subdivision process to start limiting subdivision along certain roads that have a certain AADT. That's not where we're at currently, so there are no controls. So I do want to be mindful of that when you do start subdividing along roads that have high capacity, you end up with situations with multiple curb cuts. And that's one thing I think was most important about this discussion. But I think I had another question, Mr. Lott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just want to offer a cautionary tale. I was born and raised in Clarksville, Tennessee, where my father was the chairman of the Planning Commission there for 25 years. And that community is another one in our state that has experienced tremendous growth. That the predominant style of development in the rural areas of Clarksville, Montgomery County is what we would call meets and bounds. And I think this site plan falls in line with that, and with those arterial roads that experience a lot of additional pressure, like Snow Hill Road has. Meets and bounds has been a disaster for that community, where the residents that purchase those houses that have these numerous curb cuts on roads that have a ton of traffic, they can't get in or out. And this is a precedent that I would say I wouldn't want to see repeated throughout the community, especially along roads that experience a lot of traffic. The one curb cut would really help solve that. I just think you're going to end up, I would caution against it based on what I've seen myself personally.
Thank you.
And following up, like I mentioned earlier to Chairman, is if the PUD is abandoned, there is no controls. It sounds like people are okay with the 12 units, but without that, there's no guarantee that 12 units would be the max that's built there once that goes away. I would recommend at least amend the PUD to show this site plan with the 12 individual curb cuts. That way, if the density does go up, it would come back for this body and the public's aware of that. Without that, there is no limit on the number of units.
Thank you.
So
Does the applicant have any issue relative to that?
A little bit, yeah. So again, I think this is a rare opportunity for me to be on the same side with all the opposition, which is asking for a reduction in density here. The challenge with going back through the PUD amendment process is it's another 4 months, right?
I think this body, what we would end up doing, currently you have a PUD with 57 lots and 1 access. I think what Mr. Schultz mentioned, amending the PUD to where now you have 12 lots and 12
curb cuts.
Driveway curb cuts.
You would just, instead of recommending to approve the PUD, this planning commission would be recommending to amend
The PUD.
It would go along the same
And
time
it would
frame.
go to county commission next month, amending the PUD to
As an amendment.
12 lots, 12 driveway,
based on this drawing.
based on this drawing.
Then yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Okay.
We have no problem with the 12 lots and the 12 individual curb cuts.
Okay. Is there a,
I'll make a motion to amend this PUD, abandoning the old PUD and tying this site plan to the new PUD as an amendment.
have a motion to amend to 12, density of 12 with 12 private driveway connections has been seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go on the record as saying reduction in density for this area, I think that's great. 12 curb cuts, I think is not great. And I'm going to vote no based on the 12 curb cuts.
Thank you. And I would only encourage us to have that same open dialogue when we start talking about new subdivision regulations and controls on curb cuts on high volume roads. So I appreciate that comment. Yes, Mr. Berg.
Is it possible between now and county commission to further look at that site plan and tweak it a little bit more? Or is the recommendation of this body going to go unaltered to county commission? What I'm getting at is between now and then, could this be amended to show 1 driveway? Still 12 units, 1 driveway before it hits county commission?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I
No.
can respond to that. If he wishes to go down to 12 lots, 1 curb cut, he wouldn't need to go from the county commission.
He could
You know,
withdraw.
Staff approve withdrawal, staff approve.
I think the interesting thing for this from a staff perspective, if he would have had 1 driveway connection and 12 lots, it would have already been platted through staff. Because he met the PUD condition for access and he reduced the density for PUD. What he's asking to do is not have shared access, 12 additional curb cuts, which I think this body has said, is true, under an R1, if he had never asked for a PUD, he could do by right. There is a conversation that needs to be had relative to development in unincorporated Hamilton County on roads that have additional capacities when are no controls on the amount of curb cuts relative to subdivision lots. So I think to your point, Commissioner, if he gave a plat with 1 access and 12 lots, he would not be in front of us.
Right. Okay. In that case, I'll be going to Mr. Lyle for the same reasons.
Mr. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you. So Brian, walk me through to make sure I know we don't have an attorney on this body to help us out, but to further the conversation, what Commissioner Bird was talking about, an amendment from the floor at commission could alter.
Correct.
So that option is there.
Yes.
To further conversation. The option is always there, whether we go on to city council or county commission, an amendment from the floor from that body. So it's always available. Thank you.
So in my mind, this is
Yes,
something we should use this, and because this won't be the last time this happens, and we need to make sure. In my mind, you have a unique time where the community wants something, the developer is okay with it. Now, and we should have been ahead of this. If this is something we wanted to limit, we should have done it. But now you've got the community that wants this, the developer wants this, and for that reason, on these 12 lots, I believe we should move forward in the motion and approve it for the community and the developer.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
I just want to point out, I think there's a lot of good intentions about good design and impact on the main road, but when we talk about one curb cut instead of 12, understand that if there is one curb cut, there will be an access road behind these houses. That's an additional paving cost. A lot of builders in the room. It's not going to be absorbed by the builders. It's going to make housing more expensive in the midst of a housing affordability crisis.
I mean, with all due respect, I think if you laid out the lineal feet of paving between the two options, you'd probably arrive at something not too dissimilar. But I mean, I haven't sat down with a scale or on AutoCAD or, you know, any kind of drafting software to do it. But
Well, I would only say, and I'd encourage again, like I did before, these are really good situations and items that really talk about how we want to see development and how we want to control development relative to new subdivision regulations. So I would encourage us all to stay engaged because this is something that easily we could look at and say, well, we do it everywhere, no big deal. But I do think a conversation about appropriate design and what that looks like going forward is warranted. So anyway, any other discussion on the motion? We do have a motion to amend the PUD 12 lots, 12 driveway cuts. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Two opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next case is case 2024-0026. It's unaddressed property in the 6700 block of Ballard Drive. It's to rezone from R3 residential zone to C2 convenience commercial zone. Has a staff recommendation to deny. Is the applicant present? Okay, is there any opposition? Okay, you'll have a chance to speak. Mr. Schultz, if you'll take us through this.
And we did receive emails in opposition. This is case 2426. This is a request to rezone part of the property from R3 to C2 convenience commercial zone for a retail and fuel center. This acreage is 1.55 for what's being rezoned, request to be rezoned. Looking at the zoning map to the north across Ballard Drive, you do see R3 zoning and R1. To the south, immediately abutting this property is R4 special zone. To the southeast of this site is C2 along Lee Highway. So there is Preston area for C2 in this general vicinity, but not this far back along Ballard Drive into the residential neighborhood. There's been no recent zoning history for this site. However, again, just abutting this property, it is zone C2. It's currently a vacant piece of property. To the north is multi-unit residential assisted living, as well as single unit residential along Ballard Drive. To the south is institutional. The southwest or southeast, is vacant land and commercial uses along Lee Highway. Here's a view of the site. Another view of the site. This is looking down Lee Highway. The site's on the left-hand side behind the wooded area. This is north of the site, the assisted living facility. This is some of the commercial uses you see on Lee Highway, east of the site. This is west of the site, single family dwelling. This is some of the single unit residential on Ballard Drive. This property is located in the Shalford Road Lee Highway plan, which again was adopted in 2005. The plan recommendations high density residential, which is primarily single unit dwellings and townhomes. It doesn't support commercial at this location. Again, as previous cases that we've talked about, we're currently going through land use planning in the city of Chattanooga. Until such time, we need new policies to guide where we should introduce commercial zoning or high density zoning. We don't have that in place, so we rely on the currently adopted plans as a guide. The request is not compatible with the current adopted Shalford Road Lee Highway plan. It would not be compatible with surrounding land uses along Ballard Drive, which is residential, or the development form of the area. Again, the expansion of the C2 zone will allow large-scale commercial uses, including loading docks, which not be appropriate against the existing R1 neighborhood. This existing R3 serves as a transition zone between the C2 and the residential neighborhood along Ballard Drive. Staff recommended to deny. Here's the site plan that was submitted with the request. You can see it's pushed back they're actually using the C2 portion of the site for parking, and the building's pushed back a little further. Therefore, that's why they're needing to rezone that R3. Since that time, we did have a revised site plan from the applicant showing the building shifted to the entirety of the C2. I'd let them speak to that, whether they want to withdraw the case or still move forward with the request. But this, again, we did have a new site plan submitted as of Friday. And this is that new site plan, all in the C2 area. So I'll let the applicant speak to his intentions. But staff recommends to deny the request to rezone that portion that's shaded here from R3 to C2.
Okay, any questions for staff?
No, I recuse myself on.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Name
my,
and address.
my name is Trip Ward. The address is 1 Food City Circle, Abingdon, Virginia. We've looked at, we were approached by the seller's representative to look at the site for relocation. And y'all should have gotten, I think, the letter from Tennessee Baptist Children's Home that's in the packet. The representatives representing them here today, and they can come speak also. But basically, we were presented this site. After doing analysis, we decided that it's a viable relocation. It's a 54,000 square foot store, and I would like to note that the house to the west, to kind of northwest behind this lot, is owned by Tennessee Baptist Children's Home. It's kind of right behind the building, right there. That house is owned by Tennessee Baptist Children's Home. So we're still wanting to have this rezoned. We like the second plan. Called Dr. Burrs, met with her. She suggested a community meeting. We had that about a month ago. She was there. A lot of what they didn't like was, coming on the Ballard Drive. But that portion where the drive is, it's already zoned C2. So if you switch to the next slide, Mr. Schultz, that's an amended plan. One other thing they had was landscaping along Ballard Drive. So we've got earthen berms that we'd like to put along Ballard Drive. This is a store in Abingdon, Virginia that we've done. And then also to alleviate some of the traffic along Lee Highway and Ballard Drive, an additional drive on the Lee Highway going through the out parts. So, and then if you can go to the next one. So if you look at this one, it basically shows that the project can be done. It's just, we think it's a better overall plan if we can have the out parcel, and then that'll help offset costs for doing the berm and other improvements.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ward, help me out. You kind of lost me.
Okay.
I think I'm seeing
Sorry.
three different site plans here. Will you please advise which site plan? Because Brian, you said one came in Friday.
What you're seeing on the screen is what Mr. Ward submitted on Friday for the presentation today. I think he's just showing.
Yeah, I'm just showing this is the revised plan is what we'd like to be voted on. I was just showing on the C2 on the third slide that the project still can go forward.
Okay.
That, if you look at that, most of
this is Friday.
Probably half of the building is on the portion that's zoned R3.
In your revised plan, Mr. Ward, I'm seeing kind of an ancillary driveway that leaves some wooded area. Is that intent to leave wooded? Or are you going to clear cut it all anyways?
It'll probably be
clear cut.
Yeah,
I had to ask.
Okay.
Why not? I know the area very well. Those trees are sure nice to look at.
And right now, a lot of that's I think in the newspaper article, they said that it's very hard to maintain. And a lot of where this lot is, there's still the underbrush there, but there's a representative here from Tennessee Baptist.
Okay. Thank you. I'm clear on the site plan we're looking
Yeah,
at.
so,
Thank you.
so the revised plan is the one that.
Okay, Brian, let's leave the revised plan on the screen.
Right. Was there any opposition? I know Tennessee Baptist is here. I'm assuming in support, correct? No opposition that would like to speak. Okay. Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for staff. Mr. Schultz, if the property is rezoned, can you tell us what kind of buffering there would have to be between it and the surrounding properties?
Where the butts R1, I think it's a type B, which is 20 foot. I'll check, but confirm, but it's a type B where the butts R1 zone property. Maybe just typical landscape street edge along the Ballard Drive.
Okay. And is it currently zoned? Is there any buffering requirements?
It's currently zone C2, so if somebody was going to develop it, they'd have to buffer. Well, you talking about the front portion of the R3?
Correct. Yeah, the front portion.
The front portion is on C2.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, I mean, just so everybody's clear, the majority of the lot is already C2. There's a smaller lot that he's requesting that's currently R3 that he's requesting C1 to make his site plan work better. The buffers will be the buffer that would have been on him squeezing it on the existing C2 will be the same buffer relative to if we rezone this. Let me only ask one more question. Since this was a recommendation to deny, the applicant mentioned a earthen landscape berm. I don't believe that's currently in the landscape ordinance, so that would have to be a condition that would be added. Okay.
Yeah, because all it's required is landscape buffer. And I'm
correct.
Here real quick, but.
And you would be amenable, I'm assuming, to some type of language in a condition relative to that berm along Ballard.
Yes, sir. Yes, just to answer Mr. Mavis, that is a type B, which is a 20-foot landscape buffer. Based along the R3 abutting the R1 zone, it'd be required there.
So the back line and the south, and I'm assuming the south. Well, no, that's the
R4.
I got you. Okay. Other questions? Currently, we have what? Yes. Okay, please. Okay. Have a motion to approve, and can we do language just for that can maybe be massaged between now and city council for an earthen landscape berm that maybe some dimensions maybe can be.
Yes, we'll reach out with the applicant to work out that
So
language.
Currently we have a motion to approve the C2 with the one condition has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case is 2024-0027. It's unaddressed property in the 1900 block of Thrasher Pike. Request is to rezone from R2A Rural Residential District to C2 Local Business Commercial District. Has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is the applicant present? Is there any opposition? Are you good with the condition? Oh, there is one in opposition. Oh, great. Sorry. Mr. Schultz, if you could take us through this.
This is case 2024-27. This is a request to rezone a portion of a property from R2A Rural Residential District to C2 Local Business Commercial District for commercial use. The rezoning, very similar to what we just talked about, using the adjacent property, which already zoned C2. This portion being rezoned is less than half an acre. Again, the zoning map to the north of this site's R2A and A1. To the west is C2 and M2, and to the south, abutting this property is C2. There has been no zoning history for this site, but abutting properties, there has been zoning history from 2003 and 1997. Some of that property along Hickson Pike has been rezoned to commercial. So there is precedent area for commercial zoning. It's currently a vacant piece of property. To the north is vacant and single unit residential. To the west are commercial uses and storage. South along Hickson Pike is commercial uses and self-storage. Here's a view of the site. A view of the site looking towards Hickson Pike. North of the site, southwest of the site, some of that commercial storage. South of the site, this is looking down Thrasher Pike, site's on the right-hand side. The request with condition is compatible with surrounding land use and development reform. Staff came up with a condition to buffer this proposed commercial zone to the budding R2 by increasing the buffer. So staff recommends to approve this request with one condition, a 30-foot landscape buffer to be installed against parcel 092-85, which is that abutting R2 zone property, to provide some protection from the adjacent commercial use.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? Mr. Price?
Thank you. Mike Price, MAP Engineers. Brian, we did have a site plan, I believe. Yeah. So the request is to rezone this property C2, which we've got C2 all around us. We showed a 20-foot landscape buffer in lieu of a 30, but we'll accept staff recommendations to increase it to a 30-foot buffer. I would point out the fact that the development will face Hickson Pike, would not face, or so in other words, the noises that you typically hear in the lights and that sort of thing would not be adjacent to our neighbor, but we're fine with staff recommendation to increase from a 20 to a 30-foot buffer. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you. Yes, sir. If you like to, your name and address. Thank you.
I'm Bobby Keys. I'm not at 8604 Berkeley Lane. I'm not here to opposition. I'm for the rezoning. The only thing that I'm in question about is when he fills this lot in, I have 3.5 acres down below it. I just want to see how he's going to deter the water where it don't come down my way.
Okay, great. That's a valid question. I'm sure he can answer that. Any other, is that it, Mr. Keys?
Yeah, just the water is the biggest thing.
Yes, sir.
Because my property joined this and it is sloped, and I just wanted to see, make sure that water, when he paves the driveways and the parking lots, where it don't come down on my lot.
Yes, sir. Mr. Price?
Thank you. So we do show a rather large stormwater management area there at the intersection of Thrasher Pike and Hickson Pike, which will deal with those particular issues. So you should not see any increases as it relates to runoff from this site onto yours. It will exit out onto in the same direction and manner as it's currently doing. So,
yeah, well, go ahead. I go ahead, Mr. Price.
Okay. The site basically drains from as you look at on the screen, from the left to the right, and then sweeps up to the upper right-hand side. So that's where we'll continue the flow of water. Yes, sir. So we will permit this to the state as well as to the county as it relates to the stormwater measures required. And I'll be happy to give you a card, and you're welcome to call me at any point once you see construction taking place or beforehand. And I'll try to address those issues more in a one-on-one conversation if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Y'all have some conversations afterwards. There are some stormwater and detention requirements relative to, so if maybe y'all could, right now we're talking about rezoning, not necessarily permitting. That is a valid concern, and stormwater is always a concern, and there are some permitting requirements for that. Yeah. Okay. Have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. That is with the 30-foot buffer, correct? Okay. A motion has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And next item on the agenda is case number 2024-0028. It's located at 9101 Amos Road. It's to rezone from R5 single wide manufactured home district and A1 agricultural district to R1 single family residential district, R3 multifamily residential district, and C5 neighborhood commercial district with conditions. Has a staff recommendation to deny. I know the applicant is here, and how many individuals are here in opposition? Just, okay. And then if you would like to speak, we'll have an opportunity to speak. I'm going to let Mr. Schultz take us through this case.
Mr. Chairman, I recuse on the next two cases.
Make sure that the minutes reflect that Mr. Payne is recused.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to go through 29 as well, which is the permit for the PUD, or just do the zoning first?
I'd rather us discuss them collectively. If the zoning, let me just ask the commission, and if anybody wants to object, I would anticipate a motion and a vote to recommend denial would follow through on a PUD, just like I'm not sure we need discussion on both. So let's discuss them collectively, and then we'll move on them separately.
Yeah. So 2024-28, this is the rezoning request. As mentioned before, this is a request to rezone from A1 agriculture district and R5 single wide manufacturing home district to three different zones. It's R1 single family district, R3 multifamily district, and C5 neighborhood commercial district with conditions for all the zones. The proposed use is a single unit, multi-unit residential and senior living type development. Overall acres is roughly almost 82. It's 81.55 acres. Number of units proposed is roughly 447. That's a density of 5.48. And on the screen, I have it. I'll pull this information from the applicant's PUD plan. Active adult, there's 175 units. There's active adult in the R3 zoned areas of about 30 units. Senior living, 149 units. And single family detached is 93 units for a total of 447 units in this area. Looking at the zoning map, to the north of this property is the R1 PUD. A1 PUD. To the east is C2 along Mountain View Road. To the southeast along Amos Road is M2 manufacturing. And to the west is A1. Further west, you do see R1 PUD. But generally in this area, it's A1. The applicant did provide two proposed conditions for the rezoning: a proposed 50-foot wide vegetated buffer along Snow Hill Road, and a proposed 10-foot wide vegetated buffer along adjoining A1 zone properties. And then there's been no specific zoning history on this particular piece of property. However, abutting this property over the years, there has been, as you can see on the zoning map, a lot of zoning history in the Ooltewah area. This was used at one time as a dairy farm. I think it still has some dairy equipment on it. But to the north is single unit residential, which is under development now. To the west along Snow Hill Road is single unit residential and agriculture uses. To the south, other side of Amos Road is the institutional, which is Ooltewah High School, and a church and a medical office to the east, and industrial to the northeast of this side along Mountain View Road. There is some flooding or flood hazard area to the east of this property. You can see that on the map. The area in blue or bluish purple is the site itself. You can see it does have a 100-year flood on the property as well as a floodway. Here's a view of the site. Another view of the site. This is a view of the site looking on Snow Hill Road. This is a view of the site looking from Snow Hill Road. You can just see to the right above the speed limit sign, that's Ooltewah High School. Again, part of the Ooltewah High School, south of the site. This is west of the site, which is single unit residential. This property is located in Wolf River Creek Plan, which is adopted in 2007. The plan recommendation for that plan was very low intensity residential. Plan goes for detached single unit residential with a density of 2 dwelling units per acre or less. It did state that densities over 2 acres should be considered only if substantial areas of open space is preserved, and retained a substantial buffer between the center line of Snow Hill Road and the interior dwelling units. It didn't give a specific number of acreage of open space. It just says substantial areas of open space or usable open space. Here's a closer view of that site. You can see it's in the red circle. It's very low intensity residential. As far as the zoning case goes, this request is not compatible with the adopted Wolf Beaver Creek area plan, would not be compatible with surrounding land uses and development reform north of Amos Road. Again, the plan explicitly stated that the area has existing or planned infrastructure. High intensity development should occur south of Amos along Mountain View Road. So the plan was encouraging high density growth of commercial uses south of Amos along Mountain View Road. The current zoning of A1 meets the plan recommendation of 2 dwelling units per acre. It's more compatible than the requested R1 zone. Just threw on some gross lot yields, again, based on gross acreage. As currently zoned A1, you can get a gross lot yield of 163 single unit dwellings. R1, if it's rezoned to R1 without a PUD, you can get roughly 592 gross single family dwellings. Again, this applicant's also doing a PUD, which reduces that number. It could permit 592, but they're doing 447 units through a senior living type facility. Again, as stated earlier, this area is currently going through a planning process, which provide guidance on appropriate development form and density in this location. We just don't have that currently. We're 3 to 6 months away from that being presented. So again, we're relying on the Wolf Beaver Creek plan as that guidance. So staff, based on the plan and the land uses, staff recommends to deny the rezoning request. Here's the picture of the plan or PUD plan with the next cases, which is 29, same number of units. Staff had the same concerns. Staff recommends to deny the PUD as well.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? Okay, see none. Mr. Price.
Thank you. Mike Price, MAP Engineers. So the Brooks Dairy Farm has been in existence and owned by the Brooks since 1941, so for 83 years. However, Ooltewah has experienced tremendous growth over the last 30 plus years, and much of that growth was done so without ways to provide protections to those that live and travel in the area. I think we all recognize that. Today, we have a developer and a development that looks to set a new example as to how responsible growth looks like and seeks to raise the bar of how growth should occur in the area. What are some of the ways they're different than some of the other housing developments that have occurred in Ooltewah? I'd like to pass out 11 proposed conditions that we have come up with, and then sort of hit some of the high points on those. Once you see these, we believe this differentiates ourselves from so many other residential developments that have occurred up and down Snow Hill Road and in Ooltewah. Some of those ways are as follows. The developer agrees to dedicate 10 feet of right-of-way along the entire length of Snow Hill Road. A 50-foot planted buffer to be constructed along Snow Hill Road. Homes to be located no closer than 65 feet to the new right-of-way of Snow Hill Road or 75 feet off of the existing right-of-way of Snow Hill Road. 15 acres of the 81.5 acres to be set aside for community space and buffers. Constructing a left turn bay and aligning the main entrance on Snow Hill Road with Forest Creek Lane. The plan also calls for a left turn lane to be constructed to Forest Creek Lane in their development. Finally, this is an age-restricted community. 80% of the residents are to have at least one person in the home to be 55 years of age or greater. Do you know how many left turn lanes have been constructed from Amos Road to Mahan Gap, which is a distance of 6.2 miles? The answer is 0. 0. We are proposing to construct a left turn lane. Thrive Senior Living made the intentional decision early on to rezone the property and to utilize approximately 3.7 acres along Snow Hill Road for dedication of additional right-of-way and buffering. 3.7 acres. During our public meeting, I was asked why. Why would Thrive do this? And the short answer is because it was the right thing to do. As you travel north on Snow Hill Road from this development, you get a backdoor view into just about every house and every development that's come along. We look to change that. question has been asked oftentimes about school-age children. Based upon the U.S. Census Bureau Quick Facts, Hamilton County information taken from the Tennessee Department of Education, and who moves into Tennessee Housing 2015 residential multipliers, the calculations indicate that there will only be 25 school-age children anticipated to attend public schools within this development. So in other words, no pressure on the school systems. Traffic. This is a for-rent community, again, composed of seniors that are going to be 55 years of age and greater. It is estimated this is a $135 million development. The rents will range between $2,000 to $7,500 a month, depending upon the level of care needed by those individuals. This is basically somewhat modeled after Greenbrier Cove in Collegedale. Our traffic engineer has estimated that there'll be approximately 1,791 trips per day for this development, far less than what staff estimated or the opposition. But more importantly, the preliminary numbers from our traffic engineers indicates that it only will cause and generate 117 cars in the AM peak hour and 139 cars in the PM. However, unlike every other development on Snow Hill Road, we have access to another road, that being Amos Road. Therefore, a lot of our traffic, as we see it, will be utilizing Amos Road to get out to Mountain View Road, which gives you direct access to the interstate. If you compare this to a single-family development, I think we would all agree that a single-family development is something that would be approvable pretty much through here. And you just assume 3.5 homes per acre is your density that you would use. That generates 2,644 trips per day. Our development, therefore, compared to that, would generate 32% less overall traffic, 39% less in the AM peak hour, and 47% less in the PM hour. Lastly, that I would point out that this property is no longer going to be a dairy farm. There have been others that have taken a run at this property for other uses, one being apartments. That offered far less ways to screen and ameliorate the development versus what we have proposed. The point is, this land will no longer be a dairy farm moving forward. And given that we believe that this plan presented represents the best plan, given all of these conditions that we have presented, given the way that we've addressed traffic, school, and infrastructure, and another access point, we believe this is the right plan for the area. The land use plan did mention that if you add additional buffering and additional open space areas, density could be increased. So don't look at that 2 unit per acre as the number that needs to be held to. Look at the plan and see if this isn't the right plan to occur at this area, at this location. Any questions? Be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, ma'am, if you want to come forward. We've got 9 minutes for opposition. Just your name and address.
My name is Don McDowell. I'm at 7777 Thunder Farms Trail in Ottawa. I'm going to be very short. I agree there's 2 roads there, Snow Hill and Amos Lane, but there's also a high school there. Every morning, 3 days a week, I should say, I go to a trainer in Collegedale. And I have to drive around 7 a.m. on that road. Good luck trying to get by the high school. It's impossible to turn down Amos Lane. The traffic backs up well past Forest Creek every morning that school's in session. And it's a nightmare. And I actually, to go to Collegedale, which is maybe a 10-minute drive, I add 10 minutes more just to get by the high school, which is less than half a mile from my house. The traffic is horrendous, and I can't imagine how it'll be when that development is built. I understand what Mr. Price is saying about it being low density and number of cars. I didn't hear anything mentioned about the staff it takes to actually run and maintain that facility. There has to be at least 50 or 60 people there every day going there. That's 50 or 60 cars coming and going every day. And my point is, if you look at the high school, you look at the number of kids, you look at the school buses, you look at the traffic, and you look at the bottleneck there, that is admittedly a beautiful layout. It's absolutely in the wrong place. Absolutely. And that's why I'm opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim Helton, 8618 Snow Hill Road. A 2019 rezoning request for A1 to R1 for 100 acres of the Sweetbriar subdivision, which is just north of there, 460 feet, was rejected by the county commission. So there has been a zoning case, 450 feet north, A1 to R1 rejected. The Wolf Deer plan was adopted in 2007. We have the same 2-lane roads. For this property, it says 2 per acre, single family, and attached housing sited to the interior. This PUD has 5.48, so almost 3 times that. All the attached housing is not sited to the interior. The plan also says with the limited capacity of Snow Hill Road coupled with traffic generated by Ooltewah High School and increasing residential development and create traffic congestion on Snow Hill Road. 2 units per acre or less will help reduce the number of vehicle trips generated by new development, as well as to avoid undue impact on residences. High-intensity development should remain south of Amos and Snow Hill Roads. Traffic congestion was a problem back in 2007 when this was adopted. And that's why this plan addressed that. It's all based on our 2-lane roads, which are still all 2-lane roads. The plan includes a Snow Hill Road TDOT traffic count taken next to Ooltewah High School near Amos Road, which was 4,938 back then. The March 2023 TDOT count, which is almost a year old, was 10,922, seasonally adjusted to 10,422. That's more than 100% increase, and more homes have been built since then. That was a year ago. Also, the count does not include traffic from the Mill Run subdivision, public shopping center, life care center, and the bridge assisted living. Snow Hill Road is not scheduled for any improvements. A study might be conducted in 2025. We've been told it could take years before any improvements are made. Over 600 homes have been approved, have not been built or sold yet on Snow Hill Road. At 7.38 trips per home, that's 4,428 trips. That means there could be 15,000 trips total on Snow Hill Road in the near future. That is a 50% increase from the March 2023 TDOT average count of 10,422 and a 200% increase from the Wolf Deer Plan TDOT count. For this PUD, the estimated trips are 2,389. Mr. Price says that's reduced for his traffic study, but we were told the traffic study hadn't been completed yet. So I'm not sure where he's getting his numbers from. But the staff estimated 2,389 trips per day. That would be added to the potential 15,000 trips per day. This is a 2-lane road. Amos Road is a narrow 2-lane road that goes to Mountain View Road. The TDOT traffic count for Mountain View Road is also high. It's a 2-lane road and it's congested with many wrecks and fatalities. A tragic fatality occurred recently just north of Amos Road, and that is near a TDOT count station. The March 2023 count, which is almost a year old, was 15,155, adjusted to seasonally to 14,163. Many homes have been built since that last year, and more would be built in the future. And that count also does not include traffic generated from Ooltewah High School, the church, public shopping center, and other businesses. Our 2-lane roads cannot handle all this traffic. If they were to be widened at all for a left turn or anything, it will be a nightmare diverting traffic around this. Lot sizes are considerably smaller in this development than they are the surrounding lot sizes. They're 0.70 to 24 acres. These are an average of, looks like about 0.10 acres. And they are half the size of the Sweetbriar subdivision, 460 feet north. The stormwater ponds are located in the floodplain. When you do any kind of development in floodplain, it can displace floodwaters. So the Wolf Deer Plan says that the 100-year floodplain should be in the reserve category, and says this about the Wolf Deer Creek floodplain. Special care should be taken not to disturb the natural floodplain course of the waterway. Rogers Branch also has an extensive floodplain, as was shown on the screen, especially in this area. 1 acre of land, 1 foot deep, holds about 326,000 gallons of water. So how much floodwater will be displaced from these stormwater ponds to other property? And what effects will it have on our floodplain? Zoning regulations. In the Hamilton County zoning regulations, section 6 401 special permit plan unit development. Section E says, in addition, a PUD to be located in an R3, which there's two R3 zones there, multi-family district shall be located along or within 500 feet of a street of at least collector status. One of the R3 zones, the one on the right, is not within 500 feet of Snow Hill Road, which is collector. Amos Road is only a local road. So it does not seem to fit this requirement. In Article 4, Section 1500, C5 neighborhood commercial, it says the location shall be as to primarily serve traffic on arterial or collector streets, and all business development within such districts shall be situated on site as to offer convenient ingress and egress to such streets. There's not convenient egress or ingress to Snow Hill Road. You have to go through, the subdivision, or go up Amos Road to get to Snow Hill. In Article 4, Section 1500, C5 Neighborhood Commercial District, it says parking and loading space regulations, minimum off-street parking and loading requirements. Principal parking requirements for retail is 4 spaces for 1,000 square feet. Off-street loading facilities shall be required. It does not look like these parameters would be met within that C5 zone. Thank you. We hope that you will recommend to deny this. This will have an enormous impact on top of what is already an enormous impact that's going to be happening to Snow Hill Road in the near future, because those other subdivisions are under construction right now.
Thank you. Sorry, you got about two minutes. 1 minute. Go ahead.
1 minute?
Yep.
All right. John Kombalenka, 9th floor, 633 Republic Center, Chattanooga, Tennessee. In my 1 minute, then, let me just add that I represent approximately 40 residents of this community that are impacted by this development and are upset by this development. As pointed out by the staff, there should be some discussion about planning before you add to the woe of Snow Hill Road. The only thing that Ms. Helton didn't mention was it's also part of an evacuation plan that may also be impacted by reason of this development. For all of those reasons, I would submit that it should be denied.
Thank you. Mr. Price, you got 2 minutes.
Thank you. So the first gentleman mentioned as far as trying to get through the intersection of Amos Road, Snow Hill Road at 7 a.m. Again, I would point out that we would see many of our residents not needing to go through that intersection at all. They would just direct access to Amos Road. Ms. Helton did bring up Sweetbriar Cove, which was, that request was denied. And I would ask, or I would state that if you ask many of the residents that live in Ooltewah as they drive by that, are they happy with it? The fact that there were no conditions placed on it and it developed, they would all say no. It's got its issues as it relates to what one sees from Snow Hill Road. And I think we're all familiar with what took place when they attempted to put in a turn lane. We, on the other hand, again, will be constructing it based upon an engineered traffic study and with what we see is needed in the area. The statement about the R3 status within 500 feet, yes, that's for apartments. You're looking at people with memory care, Alzheimer's, assisted living, they're not driving. So the reason that an R3 is typically required are for those reasons. We're a different type mix based upon the residents that would be living here. Finally, what I would point out on the Wolf-Teaver plan that staff relied heavy upon is that this plan was developed in 2007. Prior to Volkswagen being announced, prior to the Great Recession, prior to COVID. And when you look at all the things that have taken place since that period of time, this plan is out of date, admittedly, but even the plan itself states that it should be updated every 3 years. That's 5 times it was not updated if you went on a 3-year basis. So the plan itself, I believe, is not one that should be utilized as an example for staff to make a recommendation from. It's all they have, but it doesn't reflect the fact that Volkswagen changed the world of Chattanooga tremendously. It doesn't reflect the fact of all the growth that we have seen taking place. And furthermore, I would state that given all of the items that we have agreed to and proposed as it relates to this development, buffering, screening, turn lanes, the fact we don't put a stress on schools, how we've located the product, the buffering with the trees, all these conditions which came out of that neighborhood meeting, I think this is the right plan. It's the right benchmark set for future development also to take place in the Ooltewah area. So with that, I would ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant, opposition staff from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, staff would like to comment, just if it's okay.
Yes, sir.
Just briefly, this first time we're seeing these conditions, so it's a little hard to comment on the conditions, but briefly, I think staff has concerns about number 11, a condition on age-restricted community. Typically, that would be done through deed restrictions or something like that, not necessarily a zoning condition restricting the age of residents in a community. And then just number 4 is like the R3 zone shall not exceed 3.5 stories. With the zone is 2.5 stories or 35 feet. You have to get a special permit for that. So you can still do that special permit. It just makes the applicant aware that.
Or if you step the buildings back away from that line, you also get.
Not in the county.
Oh, okay.
Not in the county.
Okay.
That's why you have a special permit. You can still do it. Just put the applicant aware that, you know, there's a special permit that you'll have to go through. But I think my biggest concern is number 11.
What I would point out on number 11, I actually went through and looked at what other communities have done. And this is basically the language that they were able to enforce. So that's why I proposed this. Again, to give that this is not a bait and switch, but this is indeed an age-restricted community.
And to that point, there's really nothing without this condition. There's nothing that says this will be an age-restricted community once it's zoned. I see the intent behind that condition. Yes, we couldn't have.
To staff, not seeing these until now. If there's any movement by a planning commissioner to add them, they can be vetted prior to a final commission action. But that is a good point to call attention to both 4 and 11. There may be some other questions. Are there questions from staff?
And I think to the applicant's point, the plan, Wolf Creek plan is outdated. And that's again why we're going through this current process to bring them up to date. And that's one of the things I think we know in the staff report. It's like, yes, we're getting there. We're just not there yet. 3 to 6 months down the road, we just don't have anything to offer guidance other than the adopted plan, which is the.
Let me ask 2 questions. So you mentioned left turn lane. I'm assuming how is the traffic study? You mentioned it, but I think there was also a comment. It has not been fully completed. I'm assuming it's still in process.
Not been fully completed. We do see that we have, based upon the preliminary numbers, a need for a center turn lane, basically providing left turn bay for movement into our development, but also lining up with the left turn bay for the people that live there in Forest Creek Lane as well.
Okay. But you don't know how long that transition, that stack would be based on.
Not at this point. We do know that we're looking at like 500-foot long taper links based upon a 40-mile-an-hour design speed.
Let me ask one other question just so I'm aware. So if there's a condition set that puts buildings a certain distance off either the current right of way or a proposed right of way, if there's additional right of way purchased or needed in the future, that's not controlled by any kind of condition, correct? I think I know your answer.
I think so. Yeah, it would not be.
Okay, I would agree. The only other question I've got, so where is that connection on Amos Road? It's just a little bit unclear. I understand this is currently a schematic.
At the turn in Amos Road where you got the sharp bend,
okay,
that's where the access point there. So basically, if you're coming from Mountain View Road, it'd be a straight shot into development. What we would see is that Amos Road essentially would be turned into a three-legged intersection at that particular point.
Okay. Three access points currently, 2 along Snow Hill, 1 on Amos.
That's correct.
Other comments or questions? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman. There's going to be a contingent of people. This is a huge piece of property. There's going to be a contingent of people who oppose literally anything being built on this site ever, just like there are some who oppose literally anything being built in Ooltewah ever except for their neighborhood. So I think we have to look at what's the least impactful use of this property on those concerned homeowners. And I would have to think that a predominantly senior community with little to no school-age children, less use of the roads, would be the best, least impactful on the surrounding communities. And there are other neighborhoods near there that have small lot sizes, you know, within a quarter mile that were not mentioned earlier today. But I would be ready to make a motion to approve this with the conditions that have been submitted, but I will hold that for other discussion as needed.
Thank you.
Chairman, I will just add, this meets a need. Our community needs this. People are aging. The aging does not slow down so we can catch up with maps. The aging and the moving here does not slow down so we can take 6 months or a year to decide. 8 people move here every day. They're not waiting to see what we're going to do with this property. People are aging. That's not waiting. Thank you.
Mr. Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Anderson covered some of my thoughts. I think we've all seen over the last several years that there are growing pains that have happened in the Ooltewah area, and the residents did highlight what we've heard today. I think that's something that I try to remember as well is we're not deciding today between this development or nothing. This is going to be developed at some point in time, and probably sooner than later, either way. And I do like the idea that this project offers a lot of amenities that may not happen otherwise, and locks them in through the PUD process in these conditions, such as the road improvements, less density than they have by right to do now. That is accurate, right, Mr. Frost?
Under R1, you have over 7 units per acre, I think, by right, if it were to be rezoned. Right now, it's A1, which is 2 units per acre.
But as an R1, then it would.
That's correct.
And then in addition to that, I think the less school age children puts less burden on the schools. I think that's a big factor as well. So with that being said, I'd make a motion to approve with the conditions.
Have a motion to, was that with condition, these 11 conditions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it is. And I would encourage the staff and the applicant to work between now and commission to make sure that you address the concerns that Brian raised earlier. Thank you.
Okay, so have a motion to approve with 11 conditions has been appropriately seconded. Discussion on the motion. Any? So, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I absolutely agree with what Mr. Anderson and Mr. Maybe said. I also just wanted to say that I think the amount of conservation open space that's kind of woven throughout this plan. I know Brian had sort of referenced that our rules don't stipulate a percentage or exactly how that's supposed to go. But I think that this plan looks a little bit more like, as we work towards refining those rules, what it ought to sort of incorporate, where it's not just using something along the side of a retention pond, but rather, actually incorporating community spaces kind of woven throughout it. I think this will be a nice development.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
So, sitting quietly and watching what's happening in the county, obviously we know in the city, density is a key part to addressing affordable housing and the number of folks moving to the city as well as the county. Here's what I'm hoping happens in the county. With the studies that we're doing along Snow Hill, it feels like we just keep hearing more and more that we need to address Snow Hill Road. Well, the only people who are going to address Snow Hill Road are the people in the county who represent and the county government Snow Hill Road. And I would think that at some point that starts to be the conversation. Now, that is not to say I live in the city, but at some point that conversation is going to have to shift. And I think even the county commissioners, from what I've heard, want that as well. They're going to have to address the infrastructure. The facts are facts. People are moving here in record rates. People are aging. People want to, as we bring in industry, this conversation that we have in my house constantly, we want new jobs. We want higher wage jobs. We want careers. We want our kids to go to college. I mean, I have a 14-year-old that I hope wants to come back here after college. And I hope he wants to live here, and I hope there's a place for him. And his family. So I think that if we're going to, it's kind of like we keep repeating ourselves constantly. Well, it's okay as long as the roads are, the infrastructure can support it. So I think at some point we're going to have serious conversation about infrastructure. And I mean, and if you've got the tax base that's coming in to support it, maybe that's a good place to start having that conversation. Now, like I said, I'm staying in my lane. I'm in the city, and we're having that conversation as well. But as we grow as a county, and infrastructure is the number one conversation, it just baffles me why that is not the number one conversation. Amen.
Mr. Chairman, I can staff respond to that. And I think the council, that's a good point. I will say, Dan's not here, but it's one of the things we're looking at in the plans, infrastructure cost. That is, the plans are addressing that, as well as fire department planning.
Brian, you can plan it takes action by governing bodies.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that can be said by governing bodies.
Yeah.
Agree.
Good point.
Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
I would only, I think same conversation, same deliberation. Of course, these will both go to county commission in zoning.
Yes.
We're going to do the PUD. I actually welcome a motion on case number 2024-0029, which is the PUD, special permit for the PUD for the development we just discussed. Okay, have a motion, has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? And both will go county commission roads and zoning committee meeting on.
I think it's March 13th at 9:30 in this same room at 9:30 on 13th, and the following week the county commission will take action.
Okay, so March 13th. Okay, next case is case number 2024-0030. It's a case located at 2608 Dodson Avenue to rezone from R1 residential zone to R2 residential zone. Has a staff recommendation to deny. Is the applicant present? Okay, is there any opposition? Okay, Mr. Schultz, if you'll take us through this.
This is case 2024-30. This is a request to rezone from R1 residential zone to R2 residential zone for a 2-unit residential structure or duplex. It's a little more than half an acre in size. Proposed number of units are 2. That's a density of 3.5. Looking at the zoning map to the north, south, east, and west, all this property is zoned R1. There is no R2 in this general vicinity. There's been no recent zoning history for this property. Again, the closest R2 is about 685 feet to the south along Dodson Avenue. It's a vacant piece of property. To the north is vacant and single unit residential. To the east and south is single unit residential. And to the west is single unit residential. So you can see just on this land use map, there is no 2-unit dwellings in this general vicinity. Here's a view of the site. Another view of the site. North of the site, which is a single family dwelling. South of the site, which is single family dwellings. West of the site, single family dwellings. And this is looking along Dodson Avenue, single family dwellings. This is in our more recent adopted plan from 2020, which is the Area 3 Historic River to Ridge plan. It's the place type recommendation is urban residential with a single family overlay on top, which means the only primary use allowed in this place type is single unit detached dwellings and ADUs. It doesn't permit or doesn't want two unit dwellings. Here's a closer view of that. You can see it's the brown with the crosshatch, which is urban residential with a single family overlay. This request is not compatible with the historic River Ridge plan. It would not be compatible with adjacent land uses, as the adjacent land uses are single unit dwellings. Again, this is in the Area 3 plan that has an overlay that recommends single family detached residential uses only. One interesting thing about this parcel, it's 2 lots of record, which is lots 4 and 5. This applicant is wishing to do a duplex, but based on these being 2 lots of record, you could build 2 single family dwellings and 2 ADUs and go from 2 units to 4 units. So staff recommended to deny the request to upzone to R2, build on the 2 lots of record, and also build 2 ADUs, get you 4 units on this property versus the 2 unit structure. Here's a closer view of the site plan that was submitted. You can see it's 2 lots of record. This is what the applicant wishes to do, is go to a 2 unit dwelling. But these are 2 lots of record that could be developed as 2 single unit dwellings with 2 ADUs. So staff recommends to deny this request based on the most recent area plan, which recommends urban single family overlay.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? Yes, sir. We're ready for you. Your name and address.
Jeff Dawson with Nile Surveying, 3962 Churchill Road. I represent Mr. Johnson, who wishes to build these units. His contention is there are duplexes in that immediate area, maybe 1 street over. I would like to say that he does build affordable housing in this area, and he. One thing with ADU, I guess it's more of a question. The way I read the ordinance is only 1 home is allowed on a lot. You can only have 1 address.
You can have 2 addresses. You can have 1 single family dwelling per lot, and then you have ADU either attached or detached to that single family home, and have a secondary address. So in essence, you can get 4 units on this property versus the 2.
Excuse me, I'm just reading through it, and I'll take your word for it, but I just question where it said home occupation. Home occupation shall be allowed in the ADU or whatever, but only 1 home occupation is permitted per lot. I don't know that I fully understand that.
Well, home occupation is like your office. You're trying to use like your survey's office there, or a real estate office. That's a home occupation. That would not be allowed except 1 per structure. That's totally different than the number of units.
So it can be, in essence, occupied multifamily.
2 families per lot.
You could go 4 versus 2. I see what staff.
I understand my client wishes to pursue this, asks for your consideration.
Yeah, and I think Cassie in our office reached out maybe to your office or some applicant. He wanted to move forward.
So currently we have in front of us, he's requesting to rezone from R1 to R2 to do a duplex. The staff's recommended to deny. There are opportunities relative to ADUs. It would not be a duplex, but
right.
And that's been communicated. And I think you basically said he still wants to move forward with the rezone.
And staff's recommendation wasn't necessarily about the ADUs, but based on the place type, it specifically says in that plan that the neighborhoods wanted certain areas to be maintained as single family dwellings.
Gotcha. So the recommendation is based on single family, yes. Although you do have an opportunity now to add an ADU based
Correct.
On the new regulations.
You still get 2 units whether they're attached or detached.
Okay.
If we were to turn him down, he could still, can he build the house with an ADU without anything? There's nothing to do. He can do it.
Correct. If it is denied, he can still develop 2 single family. Yeah.
Mr. Byrd, first.
Just a quick question for staff. If there's currently 2 lots, if you combine these lots, what happens to lot of record status?
It goes away. Well, doesn't go away because it's making the lots of record bigger than what was there before. You still get the lot of record setback.
You still get to use a lot of records.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Ledford.
As a side note, as of tomorrow, probably about 6 o'clock, you'll be able to build a larger ADU than you would today.
I wouldn't worry. Going from 700 to 800 feet maximum.
I understand, but just, I hate for it to be an information session, but
Yes, Mr.
you
Anderson.
can't have separate addresses.
Yes, and when you submit your permitting through through LDO, Hamilton County GIS will sign off and assign two addresses. They've been trying to do them as 123A and 123 Main Street, for example, but if they have two street frontages and each unit fronts a different street, then it will assign it an address off of the two different streets. But if it's only one street frontage, that's been their standard addressing. So you'll work with them. And you can have separate meters or the same. That's not regulated through the zoning. You'll work with the public works and the other city departments on that too.
Okay, Mr. Anderson.
Jeff, you mentioned that the applicant, well, you're the applicant, property owner, builds affordable housing in the area. You know, our policy for this, we pushed ADUs for a reason. And it was to provide affordable quality housing for people. Typically, the person who lives in an ADU is a young professional just starting out, or maybe, you know, an older parent or in-law. It provides these types of housing choices. Would it hurt your project for us to defer this for 30 days while you have a more robust discussion, or the owner does, about the fact that instead of one duplex, he could have two houses and two ADUs of 800 square feet that'll hold two bedrooms each?
I fully agree with you on that.
I'm going to move to defer 30 days.
A motion to defer 30 days has been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And I will be happy to tell Chairman Collier that we did at least push one. Next case is case 2024-0031. It's located at 1620 Riverfront Parkway, rezone from M1 manufacturing zone to C3 central business zone. Has a staff recommendation to deny C3 with conditions and approve UCX 6 urban commercial mixed use zone. Any opposition? Assuming you're any opposition anywhere? I'm assuming you're the applicant. Do you have an issue with UCX? Okay. If Mr. Schultz, you want to, or I tell you what, why don't you give us your name and address and go through, if you would. Obviously, staff made a recommendation to approve a different zone, but if you could let us know issues.
Yes. Justin Dumsday with River Street Architecture, address 123 East 7th Street. This project is on the bend at Riverfront Parkway, has a 600-foot frontage, which form-based code would require 80%, which means you'd have 480 feet of buildings on a pie-shaped building. You'll see on the site plan, there's a sewer line that splits the building or splits the property. It's to the left of the building on this site plan. Yep. Goes straight through there. It's a public sewer line. So it splits the property. By doing that, it just prevents from actually having that kind of frontage. In addition, the number of stories we can do matches what the form-based code. We're not opposed to the form-based code. The problem is all the variations we would have to go after, the major variations we'd have to go after. Just because of the hardships we have with the pie shape. So we've got the building frontage. The parking is reduced down to 90 some spaces. We really need about 140 because this is 6 stories. We've got retail on the first floor, office on the second floor, and on the 6th floor with apartments. We want to make sure that there's enough parking. There's not any parking garages or anything near. So we can't use, there's not even a bus stop that's near this. So we're trying to increase the parking. And because part of the property can't be used, we're still having to set back 30 feet for parking along the street. The reason why we did C3 with conditions was basically to try to do as close to form-based code as we could, because we've got openings in the building. We've got the amount of parking. We're trying to do the screening along the frontage of the street. So that's why we ended up doing the C3, because if we have to go to form-based code, we're going to end up having to add a bunch of variations, major variations that we have to do, which just extends the timeline in order to do the construction. So we would go form-based code, but we still have to go through all the variations for it.
Yeah, and we'll ask staff a question. I anticipate you may be going to those. I'm assuming they presented a numerous conditions as part of their rezoning
They
request.
did the typical C3 type conditions, and we as staff are trying to move away from those conditions. And we felt, because you have just the zoning map, form-based code all around this property. Why not just extend the form-based code? Less conditions, makes sense to have form-based code here. And that's what we were looking at primarily from that perspective.
Well, let me ask staff a question, and there may be some other questions. Does the sewer line, does that allow changes relative to form-based code? I would assume that's a development.
Yeah, that's probably
Obstruction.
modification process for that, the form-based code committee. I'm assuming that'd be your
So that's
reasoning for that, would be the hardship of that sewer line easement running through the property.
Gotcha.
And what are other modifications that he perhaps needs?
It's number of parking, because we're limited to the number of parking with form-based code. It only allows us to have 90. We need about 140 because you got 6 stories.
Right.
I don't think form-based code was anticipating 6 stories, so that's probably part of the issue. In addition to that, it's just the landscape buffer would have to come 30 feet off the building. There's property we can't build on, yet we're having to have 30 feet of unusable space.
So let me ask staff another question. Are there hardship processes relative to form-based code through that committee? Is that?
There is.
Okay.
And just keep in mind, yes, this has, just like any conditions, if there's some of these conditions that you have to modify or cannot meet, instead of going form-based code committee, you have to come back to a 3-month process to either amend or lift those conditions.
So let me ask staff a little other questions, since I didn't start with you, unfortunately, and maybe I should have. So the recommendation from staff for UGC is for form-based code is because that's in the form-based code area. It gives the height, the 6 stories, which I believe was in the applicant's request. And I guess from a staff's perspective, they would rather recommend a form-based code with no condition. A form-based code that may need to go to get some hardship variances, rather than continue to recommend C3 with a midrid or a long listing.
Yeah, and looking into the future too, in 2-3 months, hopefully we'll have a new zoning code where C3 probably goes away to some other new zone. Those conditions will still be carried over based, I think, what we're talking about. The conditions will carry over. Where if you go form-based code, that's not going to go away.
Right.
It'll still be there. That's part of the reason we were looking at from that perspective.
Okay, Mr. Payne.
I would say one thing, this is not in the form-based code area, right?
It's all in one.
It is form-based code. It's a budding.
It's a buddy. It ain't, if it was intended to be form-based code, we would have made it form-based code when we were making it part of form-based code. There's a reason it's C3, right? Because it's not in form-based code. And we're creating a hardship for him, I'm assuming, or he wouldn't be here doing this. If we wanted this to be form-based code, we should have included it in the form-based code, but it is not part of form-based code as it sits right now. Is that correct?
As the original boundary of form-based code was correct, you're correct. But right across the street is the bend, which has been added to the form-based code. So if you argue that, the boundary of the form-based code has changed.
Oh, it has changed. We didn't just include this piece though.
The bend was officially asked to come in.
No, I'm talking about this piece we're looking at right now is not part of form-based code as we stand right now.
Correct.
We wouldn't be having this conversation, I'm assuming. Correct? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman. Brian's right. We're going to be remapping this area and, the whole city here in a few months, and we'll be converting the old zones to the new zones. And for that reason, I don't have a problem with C3 on this site personally, because even with the, 100 conditions that are on the sheet here, we can reevaluate that in a few months. We know that it's going to be a good project. We know that it serves a need in that part of town, certainly. And We can work out the conversion from the old zone to new zone later this summer once the council has approved the new zoning update. So I would move approval of the applicant version with conditions.
Mr. Byrd, did you have a comment also? Okay. Have a motion to approve. I anticipate it's this long listing of conditions that was in the application.
That's correct.
Which I'm assuming you're good with, Justin, since you submitted them. Any discussion on the motion? And are you in opposition? Okay, I didn't think I see any. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, I've lost my place. I found it. Yeah. So case number 2024-32, let's look at 6107 Hickson Pike. It's a special permit for a residential planned unit development amendment. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, we did receive, I think in your spreadsheet, we did receive a lot of emails in opposition.
And
to
the
this.
applicant is present. Okay, Mr. Schultz, if you'll take us through this.
Sure. This is 2024-32. This is not a rezoning. This is a request to amend an approved PUD plan. This property is zoned R2, received a PUD a couple years ago, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. I'll show you what that original PUD looked like. But the proposed use is single unit detached and attached residential, utilizing like a HPR, horizontal property regime, if you will. Number of acres is 7.75 acres. Number of proposed units is 62. Density is 8 dwelling units per acre. Again, it's not a rezoning of the property. Underlying zoning is staying the same. It's just to amend the existing PUD boundary. In 2016, there was a request to rezone part of this property from R2 to C2. That application was withdrawn at City Council. In 2017, this site received a special permit for planned unit development in 2017. So in 2017, as approved the PUD, the number of acres was 7.3. The number of lots at that time was 44, whether that's attached and detached. That's a density of 6 dwelling units per acre. And the acres of community lot was 0.7 acres. Today, the applicant's increasing the acres by adding an additional lot or property that was not part of the original PUD in 2017. So that increases the acres from 7.3 to 7.75. The number of lots goes up from 44 to 62, still attached and detached units. The density goes from 6 to 8 dwelling units per acre, and the number of acres devoted to community lot goes up from 0.7 to 2 acres. This is located at 6100 block of Hickson Pike, just north where Cassandra Smith comes in and the Publix. You can see this is a vacant piece of property. To the north is single unit residential. To the west is Valley Brook Community Golf Court Community, which is single unit residential. To the south, institutional. To the east across Hickson Pike is multi-unit residential and single family dwellings. This property does have a little bit of a flood, 500-year flood on the back portion of this property. Here's a view of the site. Another view of the site. This is a view of the site. This is Hickson Pike. Another view. This is north of the site. This is northeast of the site. This is looking north on Hickson Pike. The site's just behind this house. This house is not part of the PUD. This is south of the site, which is the multifamily. This is Hickson Pike. Site's on the left-hand side. This property is in the Hickson North River Plan, which was adopted in 2005. The plan recommendation for this site was medium density residential, which is single unit detached, townhomes and patio homes, and 2 to 4 unit dwellings if the density is compatible against another older plan from 2005. We're still relying on this plan while we're working through new plans for the area. Again, it's medium density residential. The request is compatible with the Hickson North River Plan, which recommends medium density residential. It would be compatible with surrounding land uses, development reform along Hickson Pike. So staff recommended to approve the PUD amendment. This is the PUD plan from 2017. Again, on this screen, you see it's 44 units. And the top right here, this is not in the PUD. It was out parcel. The applicant now is requesting to add this to the PUD. Because he's adding that to the PUD, that's a major change. Change has to come back through the Planning Commission. This is the new PUD that you're acting on today. Again, it increases the number of lots to 62. And this portion up here that was added to the property, it now becomes a dog park, some type of recreation. And staff recommends, again, to approve this PUD amendment.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for staff? The applicant, come on in. If you want to give your name and address, you got.
Ian Blackmore, Pratt and Associates. We're at 1734 Dayton Boulevard. Brian, if you could go back right here. Okay. So this was the original plan. This was done before I was with Pratt. 1 mile down the road, if anyone is familiar, we have a community called Nestledown. It's almost identical in the site layout, in the product. It's a zero maintenance community. It's lending itself to more of an older buyer, and it's the same product. It's the same unit count. I think it possibly has 2 more units. What we're finding we're finding through sales and marketing, the feedback is that the residents, these are 2-story townhomes here and at Nestledown. Those older buyers in this area want single-story homes. Can you go to the next one? So we fully intended to build this per the PUD, 44 townhomes. We got plans approved from the city. We started construction. The roads are on subgrade. We were ready to start utilities, and we had to kind of step back and evaluate that feedback. The absorption rates in Nestledown aren't where they need to be, and we have 6 vacant homes in Nestledown right now. So we reevaluated our plans and our product, and the slide first. Our villas product that we have is what we feel is more appropriate for this site plan, this layout, this area, and what the needs are right now. I apologize for this not being in here. I kind of thought some of this over the weekend, but I had added to the comparison chart. So again, this PUD amendment is based on feedback from sales and marketing and the current market and the residents. They're an older demographic. They're looking for single-story homes, zero maintenance, and some of the neighbors are here. We had to fill this site 4 feet in order to get the sewer to drain. So some of the adjacent homes now, the area is 4 feet taller. These 1- and 2-story homes, potentially, mainly the second stories, would have been looking over their fence into their yards. So now this single-story product has gotten that down below that. I think that's less intrusive from a neighboring standpoint. The comparison chart showed we've more than almost 3 times the community space. Can you go to the approved site plan? Two more. This is the approved site plan from LDO. It's hard to tell, but that's a narrow, long concrete retention basin in the back. That was the only way to get city approval for stormwater and maintain the site plan that was approved. You can go back now to the approved plan or the applicant plan. We've been able to remove that concrete detention pond, enlarge the footprint by about twice the size, have an earthen landscape berm. So there was a lot in thought and consideration that went into developing this plan, changing midstream, and presenting this today. I've spoken with Councilman Smith. He seemed favorable if we could get all the kind of the site plan details where they needed to be. We met with the Friends of Hickson and the Valley Brick community. They had some feedback about maybe where the compactor and dog park are located. And then lastly, there's 3 major topic discussions that come up on all of these: traffic, schools, and stormwater. So Mike had a very similar, Mr. Price earlier. If this is an older community of residents. The original PUD had 44 units. We added that area to the north. In the approved site plan is 46 units. These are 3-bedroom townhomes. If each house was a family of 4, they could have 4 cars. There could be 184 cars in the approved PUD. On our new site plan, we're limited on number of parking spaces per unit. If we go at, I think it's like 1.7 is what it rounds out to be. The parking would be 112 cars, and that would be capped based on the parking that's built. So there's a 72 or reduction in traffic. Schools, again, this is an older potential buyer, not likely to have kids, or the reduction would be there. There's a reduction in the burden on the schools. And then the stormwater, as I mentioned, we were able to remove the concrete detention pond. That would have been a 6 or 8 foot tall wall in those neighbors' yards, get to an earthen pond, provide the landscaping. That's all I have.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ian, I got a couple quick questions. So the plan that you're proposing that's on screen now is the current revised plan as amended?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Brian, go back to the original approved plan we have on this file now. Okay, that's fine. That'll work. So actually, a couple things to note. So what you're saying in the original plan, you had a culvert type situation, hardscape.
It was it's a concrete detention basin. They're 4 concrete walls.
So it's like a swimming pool.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. The earthen is definitely, I think, a better option there. Also, what I noticed when you talk about the radiuses, I'm kind of getting into engineering here with the streets. This the new site plan has harder angles, so I'm seeing probably slower speeds through there naturally.
Correct.
I don't know if you would agree with that or not, but that's
Yes,
what
sir.
I'm seeing. And then the location of the dog park, it'd be interesting to see what comes of that. It looks like it's closer to Hickson Pike, which can't be quiet. So I think that's interesting. I'll be interested to hear what is said about that. And then, not that this is a zoning question, it never is, but these are for sale units or for rent.
They could be either.
And that's the way it's designed.
Correct.
Like I said, and that's not a zoning question, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. And the last part is, I do know that you talked with Councilman Smith and brought him in on the details. So I want to make that, put that on public records. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Chairman, for the record, this is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is the HPR, horizontal property regime, where there is no lot lines. It's one lot.
That is correct.
With all these, because this plan here has, what, 44 lot lines?
Yeah, or more.
Or
44.
more. And then this one is one lot, but all these are considered condos, if you will, with one HPR.
This becomes private streets, private maintenance. It's all HBR stuff.
Yes.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Scott.
We're going to hear some questions coming from opposition about smell and all the other things. Are you proposing with these buffers to take care of those kinds of issues?
The buffers would, I think, had value there in the noise absorption, and I'm not sure with the smells. The area that was selected for the amenities, as Mr. Ledford said, is close to Hickson Pike, close to where the traffic and the noise exists. There may be some issues, and I can't speak to that right now because I haven't seen a final engineering plan, but having other units in lieu of the pickleball and dog court, and then secondary access and fire access to all those, I'm not 100% sure if units could go where the dog park and pickleball or playground and stuff are.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. You'll have yes, sir. If you'll give your name and address, you've got 9 minutes.
Sure. My name is Greg Taylor. I live at 248 Valley Brook Lane in the Valley Brook neighborhood. I'm president of the Valley Brook, Windbrook, and Tusky Place Homeowners Association. We have 278 homes in our neighborhood. Also, I'm the president of the Friends of Hickson, which is a 501c3 organization that serves as a neighborhood association for the residents of Hickson's. And in that capacity, I sometimes serve as a conduit of the flow of information from our elected officials, developers, and organizations to the community. And this, what happened in this case. I was contacted by our local elected officials, and I helped coordinate a meeting with Ian, and we were very thankful that they were willing to come and meet with us. And, you know, we had a very large crowd there, but it did create, it was well attended, but it did create some anxiety and concern. And that's evidenced by the fact that the petition circulated with almost 254 signatures on it, opposing in general this amendment. But there was a number of reasons that were listed, you know, and I'm trying to, you know, like herding cattle and getting everybody on the same page with what can be done. So I'm just going to kind of list through a couple of those things and see what, you know, what you guys think. Obviously, we're concerned about protecting the value of our neighborhood. It's experienced a little bit of revitalization recently. The golf course has been purchased. They're spending millions of dollars. So, obviously we all have concerns about the value of our home. If you look at this parcel now, they had to remove all the vegetation. And so everything's basically gone. And so it's had, as they mentioned, raised it up a few feet. This has negatively affected, the Valley Brook community in a number of ways. I mean, you can now see Hickson Pike from the golf course, from the community club, from the clubhouse. You can see it as far east or far west as Masters Road. So that's a problem. It's a horrible looking sight line at the very beginning. So we would like to see a condition of some type of buffer all the way around the development, whether that's, large evergreen trees. I'm not an expert in buffering what needs to be there, but something that improves the sight line and it helps just improve everything about seeing what we're seeing now. There are some concerns about the location of the stormwater pond, but in retrospect, I'm not really sure what could be done about that. It does, in its current capacity, serve as a bit of a buffer between the back of that to our homes in the community. Again, if we could get some condition, and it's reflected there, but if we get some condition that these trees, this vegetation, decent size is required, that helps mitigate the concern. Everybody's concerned about flooding. That area floods a lot. That's been reflected in some of the earlier conversations. The dog park, it's definitely a concern for a lot of people. I don't know what can be done about that. If you move the dog park, there's something else going to be built right there. I'm not an expert, but there are concerns as stated about the smell, the sounds and things like that. So if there could be some accommodation, something to help remedy that, I'm not sure what that is. That would obviously help. I think the biggest thing that makes this more tolerable, even though there's a lot of opposition, and I want to state that I'm sitting here speaking from very concerned neighbors, is this is currently a one-story development. That is a big deal. So if we had a condition of one-story units, that helps improve that sight line. It makes things a lot more tolerable from our perspective. Again, getting back to the dog park area there's a trash facility right there, which you can't really see it in that picture, but it's right against our homes right there. That's a big, that bothers a lot of people. So you're going to have, these trucks coming in, picking up trash. If that could be relocated somewhere toward more what I call the commercial district, or I guess it would be southeast or southwest of there, that would be preferred instead of that's right against homes in Tuskegee Place. Let's see. Again, kind of getting back to the type of homes, which is reflected in when you start talking about rental homes and all that kind of stuff. And I get that. I think the focus, again, being on one-story buildings with detached garages and private roads, if that's a condition, that helps mitigate some of those concerns about what's going in there. As a quick side note, I'll conclude, and I think these homeowners are in attendance. The land has been moved. They had an 8-foot privacy fence in the back of their house, and now there's dirt all the way up to 2 feet to the top of their privacy fence. That's obviously a big problem and a concern for us. So, I would ask that at the very least, some of these conditions be applied that we mentioned, perhaps a continuance so we can have more discussions. Again, Ian was very kind and thoughtful coming to meet with us. We appreciate that, but maybe a continuance to talk about that or some of these conditions applied.
Thank you.
Just real quickly, I'll make sure I understand this. The plan as it's approved right now is for 2-story buildings, which you're not a fan of. So your group is happier with the 1-story.
The site plan we were presented with that showed 1-story homes. While we don't necessarily like the attached garage, there's a lot of people have issues with a lot of things.
Sure.
That's more desirable.
But in general, you're better off with a 1-story plan than the 2-story, even though is it like 2 or 3 more units? Is that what it boils down to? Something like that? Or is there any?
I don't think, there are people that are concerned about the increased density. I don't want to act like I'm speaking for, 300 people, but generally speaking, that's a more important issue than And the buffering that we're talking about, getting these trees in there.
The other thing I heard you say was you like the current plans pond better than the
first one. The first one was horrible, and I think we discussed that. We don't like it, but the reality, nobody likes that being
right.
But it's got to be there. I mean, the water's got to go somewhere. That's better than what we've seen.
Big old
before.
concrete pond. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I think there are a few others that want to speak. We've got about 4 more minutes. Did y'all also want to speak?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
My name is Mike Bradley. I live at 1420 Innisbrook Drive. So that's in the Winbrook subdivision. I'm just about 2 lots north of the northernmost border of this property. So I just wanted to echo the concern about the dog park and the trash compactor facility. My family and I are both concerned about noise, other nuisances from these facilities, and they are placed in a location that's very close to a lot of existing homes. So hoping that something like that could be located, as Greg said, maybe more to the south, where there's just a border basically with a church parking lot in Hickson Pike. Another concern I wanted to raise, just in general, stormwater. I know that may not be necessarily in the full scope of this body. I've spoken with both the city stormwater division and the engineer who signed and stamped the original plan to understand the stormwater plans. I think there's a gap in that process where the engineers assume that there's capacity in the existing drainage system. In reality, on a regular basis, the road in front of my house floods all the way over. As far as I know, all the water, or at least a lot of the water from this subdivision, will be directed into those same storm drains. So it seems like between the city and the engineers, there's maybe more communication that could take place to make sure that something like that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Rick Nelson. I live at 1404 Innisbrook Drive, directly to the rear of this development. If I don't have enough for every member, I'll give you my perspective on the increase of the elevation of the subject property. If you look, it's already a low-lying area. Valley Brook, Creeks Bend. I think Creeks Bend's currently underwater today. You look at the perspective again, and I built an 8-foot fence in advance of this development. You see equipment and 2 individual, average-sized individuals. I see their belt buckles from the kitchen of my home, looking over an 8-foot fence. So that site has been raised significantly. I don't care if it's 1 story or 2 story, they're going to be looking over my fence into the pool area. So again, I think if you look at Valley Brook, the surrounding area, they're all single family residential properties owned. I think the design of this project screams of rental units, and that's inconsistent with the contiguous properties within the Valley Brook, Winbrook community. And I hope y'all keep that integrity of our neighborhood in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian, you've got a little bit of time.
Sure. I just tried to take some notes so I could respond.
Great.
All right. So the first thing that I heard was regarding visibility and aesthetics. So could staff maybe correct me, but I don't know if there's any required buffering between the R2 and the R1 or whatever that's adjacent.
There's not this you propose.
Right.
Or
So we are willing to provide that. You can see that. I don't think we could commit to exactly what size and spacing and everything, but there would be a buffer there. That would be for both parties. There was a lot of mention of the heights over the fences. Again, that was a lot of what we thought about going from the 2-story reduction down to the single-story units. Stormwater. The location of it is in the natural low. It's been approved for construction. And again, we took a lot of thought and consideration into how we could make that more enhanced. Going to the earthen pond allows that buffering that they're looking for. And Brian could pull it back up, but a portion of our site is in the 500-year floodplain. Majority of all the Valley Brook homes are in the 500-year floodplain. So that's an existing condition prior to us getting there. Some of the offsite stormwater issues. Is there an aerial view? So north of where the compactor and dog park area is actually a privately owned detention pond by Mr. Asai. That detention pond hasn't been maintained ever since it's been built. We were contacted by Mrs. Kessler, which is to the east or to the west, She was having drainage problems. We stepped in, we fixed her drainage problems. We fixed the pond. We did all that on our own accord. The Pash family who's here is in the corner. They were having a large tree we needed to get removed. We took out the tree and we reduced their drainage concerns. And now Mr. Nelson is here. We've been made aware of his concerns. We're on a daily or a rain event communication with him to try to address that. As far as the dog park goes, we tried to locate it in an area that we thought was, I guess, away from some of the community, being that existing stormwater pond is there. So there are no homes that are adjacent to that. And again, we're open to relocating some of these amenities as long as we can meet fire protection. The LDO can approve the final site plan, and no major PUD amendments will be required. If it was going to be a compactor, those now are fully enclosed, fully watertight. The only other thing is okay. The compactor is fully enclosed and watertight. And the last thing was the offsite drainage capacity. We can only make improvements or address the concerns that are on our property. As I mentioned, it's at the existing low. If there are offsite drainage concerns or, offsite city infrastructure issues, we're open to talking to the city about where our outfall is, but we have no, I don't think, authority to make any of those offsite stormwater repairs that may be needed in the existing condition.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
So Ian, I do know that Councilman Smith is on top of this particular case, and you all are lucky to have such a capable representative. Enjoy him while he's there for these last few months as he transitions over to the commission full time and leaves the city, because he certainly will. Has been a great advocate for you. So I do know that he's on top of it. What I'm going to ask you publicly is, as I think we need to move forward, and I think that you've got a great communication established. You're willing to work on the conditions. And I want to thank you all for coming together. I mean, to have this community come together, also with Friends of Hickson, which I know is a dynamic organization out there, is really, really special. So my question to you is, are you willing to sit down and work as this moves through to council over the next month? Because these conditions can be addressed. And even if they're not all exactly hammered out, we have no problem with deferring that at council level until they are hammered out.
Yes, sir.
And like I said, I have a full faith in Councilman Smith to make sure that they are handled and addressed before it goes to there. So is that something you're willing to do?
Yeah, we're open to further discussions on some conditions as far as the landscape.
And one question that I had, did I understand that this went from 2 to 1 story?
It is currently approved for construction for 2-story. They'll now be all single-story units.
Okay, that's great to hear, because that sounds like a really big concern as well. So if you'll permit me, I'm going to go ahead and move for approval of this, knowing that the commitment has been made to further this discussion, and we will hammer out these details as we move to council.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Okay, have a motion to approve has been seconded. Mr. Holland.
Yeah, just from the neighborhood, Mr. Taylor, I think you all have had, just confirming, you've had really good communication. Do you feel like you've got an opportunity between now and the council to work on some of the amenities and things that you saw?
I would like to have a little more time, frankly, but I understand. I'm not trying to do hardship, but that's all.
So I just, yeah, and my point to asking that is to just clarify how that process works. And Councilman Ledford can kind of clarify how that would work on the council end, and it can be deferred indefinitely until you work out those details and the council is satisfied that the community has worked with the developer.
That's correct. So one of the benefits is from here, it's a 1-month deferral. So you may be able to work some things out in 2 weeks, but as we move forward, it's kind of nice to have that time frame. It means all parties get together and get their homework done before we hear it in committee. But even when we move up to the day that we're supposed to hear, that's why at the Planning Commission, you don't necessarily hear us give a date of when it will be heard. It's something that we kind of stopped doing a few years back. And that's because we don't know the future. There may be unaddressed issues that are still left to be discussed. And the beauty of that is that we can move it in any time frame we want at council, week to week, month to month. We can put it on the table until it's ready to come off. So I think that flexibility, I just want to let you know that flexibility is there.
Can I, once real quick, while we're at this, I'm just going to say, it seems like you've done a great job talking with the community, but it seems like you also have several people that are more impacted than others, like Mr. Nelson, particularly. Would you be willing to obviously talk to him about a buffer? I mean, I would be a little frustrated if I could look over my 8-foot fence and, see belt buckles. I mean, can you look at buffering on your side as well, or fencing?
Potentially, but then the buffering
Obviously.
would contradict with stormwater on the property. I
get
don't know
it.
if you guys
I know
saw the
there's-
pictures or not, but these come with fully fenced patios.
Mhm. Yeah, I get it. Just be open to talking to them about the sense. And I was going to tell you, we've done some dog parks, and depending on if you have the turf or not, if you sprinkle them heavily, it helps a lot anyway. I don't know if you plan on that. You probably are, but that's one way we solve at least the smell issue.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Arnold.
Yep, just one more thing. I think you did commit to a buffer on the perimeter of of the entire site, right?
I hadn't committed to any specifics, but there will be an aesthetic. But we can get with them between now and council and kind of see if we can work that out. Something that's agreeable to Councilman Smith and his constituents.
Yep. And Councilman Ledford, is that something you'd add now, or you prefer to wait till council?
And there would be no reason to delay this. We can try to set up a meeting after this.
I have a motion. It's been seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? 1 no. Motion carries. Thank y'all. Okay, on our agenda, case number 2024-0033, located at 1310 East 36th Street, rezone from M1 to R2. Any opposition? Okay. I have a motion to approve. The applicant I see is here. Motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Case number 2024-0034, 2 unaddressed properties in the 3600 block of Alton Park Boulevard and the 300 block of West 37th Street, rezoned from M1 manufacturing zone to R3 residential zone. Any opposition here? I have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mandatory referral 2024-0035, unopened alley, 500 block West 35th Street in the city of Chattanooga. It's a right-of-way closure referral. Is there a motion? Does staff approve this?
Yes, we recommend approve.
Okay. Motion, heard a motion. It's been seconded to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I believe no text amendments, correct?
That's correct.
We have minutes from last month's meeting. If someone has reviewed and is interested or willing to make a motion. I have a motion to approve the minutes. It has been seconded. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? And Mr. Payne. We are adjourned. Thank y'all.
We may have.
Do we have a?
Okay.
You don't. Yeah, I'm supposed to ask if there's. Gotcha. Okay, well, good. I'm supposed to ask if anybody wants to speak on anything, but I'm glad. Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you.